Hey people, it's Steel Gamer with a video titled, as he says, Here's Why People Have a Problem Doing Math. Apparently, one of the subscribers had sent me this link to this forum, and I had to read through the entire topic, but the point is that they know I take things apart, they know I analyze things, and they know how I do things. So, in that regard, after reading through the topic, I felt the same. I not only agree with 100% agree with what the person talks about in the topic, but I also know how they feel, because them with the math community is like me with the gaming community, where the gaming community is so hell-bent on telling me I'm dumb or I don't know how to play or whatever else it is, regardless of what facts I post in the video, that it's me against the community. In the same fashion, it's basically this person against the math community. So in that regard, I feel the same way. So again, I had to read through the entire topic, and I'm sure there's been more replies now, but again, I totally 100% agree with exactly what this person says on why people are having a problem with math. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to read, the topic. I'm going to break it down as I'm going through it, literally, explaining what the person's talking about, or at least, from the viewpoint, and then go over the replies. I've left the link in the topic to the topic in the description below this video so you can follow it. So without further ado, let me get right into it. I'm going to bring the topic up, bring the forum up now. Okay, so the first thing here is that this is on a topic called, this is on a forum. This topic is on a forum called My Math Forum. And I'm sure this is not either the only place this person has posted this, or it's not the only person, they're not the only person who's posted something like this. So let me start by getting right into what they actually posted here. And I'll break this down so people can understand it. Because again, this is, I think, why the person sent me this, because they know I'm going to analyze this. Now, whether they did it to make fun of me or not doesn't really matter. The point here is that I agree with this person, and I know how they feel, having been on the receiving end of this being me against the gaming community in the same fashion they're against the math community. So here we go. Okay, so it's I guess apparently he was making the whole post is about, if you're having a problem understanding math, here is the reason why. Basic point. That's the topic title. It's right there. Okay. So he says, I'll start with the simple answer, then break it down in detail. Simple answer. 88% of math cannot be done. All right, I don't know if it's 88%. I think the person was just saying that, or if that's an actual figure. I don't know where they got it from. But anyway, the point is, a lot of people, basically, it's not even people. It says math cannot be done. So I'll get into that because, like I said, I had to read through this entire thing to understand this. Okay, so here's an overview as to why math can't be done. Humans screwed up the entire system by making things up that the math system itself not only won't ever allow, but also makes it impossible for what people came up with to actually be done. In other words, the math system itself prevents the way people are doing it from actually being able to be done. Yet everyone thinks there's nothing wrong with it. That's like me. I'll post up a video showing there's no instructions on the screen, proving that there's no instructions on the screen, and somebody will like, oh, that's perfectly fine. All right, so he goes, here's an in-depth breakdown. This is what people are taught, and he's referring to the math. He or she is referring to the math. The system is absolute, which is true. 5 is 5, 6 is 6, 7 is 7. Like, they're absolutes. They're set. You can't alter them. What they are is what they are. But at the same time, now you have, there are exceptions while saying it's still an absolute. So he or she proceeds to break it down. I'm going to call them they. They proceed to break this down and says, okay, that is the first major contradiction, which in itself is a major problem. Something that is an absolute cannot have any exceptions to it at all for any reason. If there is an exception, then it's impossible to be an absolute. You cannot have this both ways, and that is a base fact. If this is a straw, then this is a straw. You can't have you can have a smaller version of it, but it's not going to change that it's a straw. Now, a straw by definition is anything. The standard definition of straw is what everybody uses. So when you say straw, that's the way people think. But if you actually look at the definition of straw, you can use a pen as a straw, anything to suck liquid up through or something of that nature. That's what it is. So there is a generalized user definition, and then there's an actual definition to what it is. But the actual definition, no matter what anybody decides to do, cannot change the baseline of it being a straw or whatever it is. So that's out of the way. So now, as they proceed to go on, where you have a system as an absolute, and then there are exceptions to the system while still saying it's an absolute, which doesn't make any sense, they basically say, here's an example of those two aspects being put into practice. The system, in addition, says that 2 plus 3 is 5, and that is an absolute, which is one group of 2 units and one group of 3 units. Fair enough. Now, when you're dealing with multiplication, it says 2 times 3 is 6, because there is either 2 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 2. That is also an absolute. Base fact, fair enough. Increasing the amount of units from 5 to 6 is what makes 2 times 3 possible. Otherwise, there are only 5 units. And the rules in the system of math outright prevent 2 plus 3, 2 units, one group of 2 and one group of 3 from ever becoming 6. The math rules make that impossible for it to happen. So that the reason why I'm stressing that is because that's important in what I'll be going over. So the math rules themselves prevent 2 plus 3 from ever becoming 6, no matter what it is. So if you have 5 things to count, it'll never be 6, no matter what you do to it, unless you add an actual additional 6th thing to the amount. So the amount goes from 5 to 6. It'll never be 6, no matter what you do to it. That is an absolute. Okay. All right, so multiplication outright requires there to be a total of 6 actual units. So there is either 2 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 2, and that is a fact. So after teaching someone those basic concepts, they are ready to go, but now start having a major difficulty time because of BS like this, and they proceed to go into an example layout of one of the millions of fallacies in math. It says, this person says, I will explain how this is a fallacy, I'll explain how attempting, can't even talk. I will explain how attempting to obtain a third variable in a problem that only contains 2 numbers is impossible because of the math system itself. And they said, I'll explain this using height, width, and depth. To begin, let's say you want to find the depth of a rectangular area that only has the numbers 3 and 2. And the 3 is on top and the 2 is on the side. So they have arranged the diagram as shown. Okay, so it's hard to see here, but there's 3 across the top and then there's 2 on the side. So the setup now when you're doing a rectangle, it's important to understand that because people start arguing this point. When you're doing a rectangle, the only way to actually set this diagram up is like that. I think the person said that. I'm using what the person said later on now, but the only way to actually set up a rectangle in this fashion is to do this diagram. You can't really do it any other way because a rectangle is once you have 4 sides and 2 are smaller than the other, making it longer is what it comes down to. I should say one is shorter than the other. 2 sides are shorter than the other. So you have 4 sides. 2 are equal, it's just 2 are longer. Okay, so they're all equal in their own way. Length is equal to length, and the sides are equal to sides, or whatever you want to put it. Anyway, the point is that you have to set the diagram up like this. Okay, so the setup shows there are 3 across the top and 2 on the side, or 2 on the top and 3 on the side, which would be 3 on the side here. I can't do it with that. It's going to make you do that. Or 2 here and then 3 going down. All right. But they're pointing out that the main point is that there are only 5 actual units, which will completely prevent this from being done as a multiplication problem. Now, that is not entirely true. You can multiply this, but the answer is going to be 5. So I think what they're doing here is they're saying that it's basically done as an addition problem. It's not done as multiplication. And even if you were to do multiplication, you still arrive at 5. So that's what I think they're getting at here. So in other words, I guess apparently because of how they solved this, how this problem would normally get solved amongst the math community, that you would have a, because of the way it's done, That's the reason they said that. It's not done as a multiplication problem. I'll get into that as I go on. So, again, this person proceeds to say, hey, by the way, welcome to the stream, guys. I'm going over, as the title says, there's a lot of issues involved here. Somebody, one of my subscribers linked me to this topic. I have no idea who this is, but I had to read through it, and I had to make a video about this because I completely agree with exactly everything this person's saying. And as a quick recap, I feel like I know how they feel because they are with the math community like I am against the gaming community. I'll say something wrong with the game, the entire community will come down on me, and it's me against the community. So in this fashion, it's this person against the math community, and despite them being right, the people on this forum are pulling the exact same thing as what the gaming community does with me in my videos. So I just happen to agree with this 100% agree with everything this person's saying, and I'm going to go over the replies. Okay, so proceeding here. The person sets up the diagram like this because it's a rectangle. That has to be done like that. And again, I've already read through this, and I'm sure there's additional replies, but I've already read through this entire topic because I had to make sense out of this because I was reading this, and this just fucking blew my mind. I was like, wow. All right, so anyway, this is what happens. When you're doing this, this is a rectangle. It must be set up like this. You can't do this any other way because it's the best description you can give for it when you're doing it. Okay, so they proceed to say, I don't know if this is a he or she, so I'm referring to them as they. All right, so they proceed to write, the setup shows that there were 3 across the top and 2 on the side, or 2 on the top and 3 on the side. But the main point that they're making is that there's only 5 actual units, which will completely prevent that from being able to be done as a multiplication problem. Now, it's not that you can't do it as a multiplication problem. Again, what I'm thinking they're saying is because of the way people do this problem, it winds up being a multiplication problem, which makes it impossible to do it the way they're doing it. It's not that you can't do it as a multiplication problem. You can't do it at the way the community is doing it. All right, so as explained above, there would have to be 6 actual units in the diagram itself, which is 2 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 2, which would make the diagram look like that. So they are correct in that regard. Multiplication literally states in order for you to have 6, you have to have 6 actual things to count. You cannot have 5 units and get 6 out of them as a multiplication. It just doesn't work. You can't multiply 3. You can't add 2 and 3 together and then come up with 6. It doesn't work. Math prevents that from happening. So let me proceed to go on here. All right. So as explained above, so the diagram here would actually be 3 on the side here, and then 3 across the top. So there are now 6 actual units there. I think you're starting to see where this is going. Okay, now they proceed to go into explain to how the system of math that people are using is done. Now, the way the exception to this has to be done, the way the exception has this being done is impossible, using one number twice. So in this regard, you would have to use the corner piece both on the top and on the bottom, giving you 3 on the top and then 3 on the side, which is a total of 6, which is not possible with 5 units. You only have 5 things to count. You cannot change that to 6. The multiplication rules prevent that from even happening. That's not even possible under the multiplication rules. All right, so what this person is saying is if you're gonna pull that stunt, you're actually saying 3 plus 2 is 6 because you only have 3 and 2. You do not have 6. So what winds up happening is people are trying to turn this into multiplication without the proper number and then saying it's a multiplication problem and arriving at something that just simply multiplication won't allow. The number won't change from 5 to 6 just because you count it weird. So let's see, because you would take the corner dot and use it both across and down, and you would have 3 on top and 3 going down, which makes now 6 with only 5 units, and they put a weird face there, which is true. You can't have that. All right, so I'm going to let that sink in for a bit. All right, I'm just going to let this sink in. All right, so they proceed to go on. So now a system that once stated 2 plus 3 is 5 and is an absolute which can't be changed, is now saying, even though there are a total of 5 units, 2 plus 3 is now just going to be 6. That's literally saying, I ran the sentence on. He's saying that a system that once told you that 2 plus 3 is 5 and that can't change and is an absolute is now going to tell you later on that even though there's only 5 units, 2 plus 3, that you're somehow getting 6. They basically made the comparison to colors. That's saying this circle is green, now the circle is blue. If the circle is green, you're later on saying the circle is blue without ever changing the circle's color itself from green to blue, while still saying it's green. It doesn't work like that. The color table won't even allow that. No matter how you say it, it's still going to be green unless you actually change the color. It doesn't matter what you come up with. It's going to be green. So it doesn't matter how you count that or how you arrange it. You still only have 5 units, preventing you from getting 6. Period. The math prevents that from even being the math itself. The rules of multiplication and addition prevent it from being 6. You can't remove addition and multiplication from this and then try to say it's a multiplication problem. Multiplication requires you. It's a requirement for there to be 6 actual units in order for you to get 6 out of it. All right, so let me continue. So what you have is a system that basically tells you here is the basic math. Oh, but that basic math doesn't apply now because this is different. You just screwed the person up. So no rational human being is going to, again, I'm taking statements from later on, no rational human being is going to pay attention to that. They're going to tell you to go fuck yourself. So, all right, so this is what it comes down to. They said, I do not care who says what or how many people say it. You cannot have both 3 on top and 3 on the bottom with a total of only 5 actual units. And that is true. You can't. Nobody, no person in math, I don't care what, I agree with that. I don't care what professor or what anybody else says. You're not going to tell me, I'm saying for me now, you're not going to tell me 2 plus 3 is 5, that's an absolute, and multiplication requires you to have 6 actual units. Place 5 on the table and tell me you're getting 6 out of that. I don't give a shit who you are. Anybody that does it that way is doing it wrong. They're making shit up and not following the math principle because the math principle prevents that from becoming 6. It's not even possible to get 6 out of there according to the math rules. So let me go on further here. So they basically continue saying, so either basic math will completely prevent the problem from being done, which is what I said. It'll prevent the problem from being done the way it will prevent people from counting it like that. Or people doing the problem the way they are completely prevent the basic math from being done. So either basic math is not being applied here or basic math doesn't work. So people are making shit up and then removing the equation while still trying to say that's just how it's done. No, you're fucking with the system that told you it can't be done. All right, so either way you want to look at it, both sides will prevent the other from existing, which is true, which makes it impossible to do no matter what. That is why that problem is impossible to do when you're doing width and depth in a rectangle, because you can't make 6 come from 5 just because you're counting it weird. The math tells you you must have 6 actual units. Getting the manipulation together and then getting the unit after the fact that's not how that works. You can say it does all you want. That's man manipulating the system to get it to work how they want it to. That's not how the system actually says it's required to be done. So you can't say here are the rules and then say those rules don't exist and not apply them and then say you are applying those rules while you're doing the problem. That literally makes no fucking sense. So let me continue here. No rational human being will ever waste their time dealing with something this dumb and stupid. So teachers and tutors and whoever else really have a lot of nerve telling people after they just got done explaining all that and telling them to do that, that the person that is having a problem with what they just said is saying that they're the ones with the issue or they're stubborn, they don't want to learn. That's complete crap. You just completely destroyed the own system telling somebody that's how the system is done. Nobody's going to be able to follow that, and a rational human being is not going to be able, they're not even going to waste their time. They're going to say, get it lost. You can't keep your system straight. Either it's 5 or it's, either multiplication requires you to have 6 and it's 6, or if you have 5 units, you're not going to start screwing the way it's counted and then say it's 6, that's how this rule works. Multiplication prevents you from counting it like that. I don't care what you say. All right, so anyway, let me go on. So he says, I'll close with this. For the people who are having problems with math, there's nothing wrong with you. And there isn't a problem with the system itself. The actual problem is the people making things up in order to get the math system to fit into how they want, instead of actually applying the system itself to the problem, which is true. There is no person on the face of this planet that is going to say what I have in this topic is multiplication. The rules of addition say it's not, and so does multiplication. And that is true. The rules of multiplication require you to have 6 units in order to get the answer of 6. You can't have 5 units and get 6 out of it. Both the addition rules and multiplication prevent that from, it's impossible. But it doesn't even, you can't get, if you're getting 6 out of that, you are no way in hell, in any way, shape, or form, applying multiplication to that. It simply can't work, and it doesn't work. Okay, so let me get into some of the replies here, and I'm sure he or she has replied to this. All right, so Skipjack says, your 88% is an invented statistic. Okay, that I agree with. I don't know where they came up with 88%. But the so-called fallacy you give is based on a simple error. Okay, now let's check this out. Taking into account everything that was just explained on why people, this is showing why people are having a problem with math. Not asking for help with the problem. It's explaining that the system just told you how multiplication works and then how addition works, and then you're saying not to apply that while saying to apply it. That's the issue. So now this person says the so-called fallacy you give is based on a simple error. The top and side of a rectangle of the dots share one dot, so the top and left side have 3 dots each, but can be shown as just 2 plus 3, 5 dots. That is 100% false. That cannot happen. So Skipjack's answer doesn't work because the math prevents one of those dots from being used twice. The math itself prevents that. You cannot get 6 out of that unless you have 6 actual units. 2 and 3 in that equation is not 6. It never will be, never has, because math prevents it from being 6. So I don't know how people are getting around the math system here. You're using basic addition and multiplication here. All right. So anyway, this person now proceeds to go in and say, you just proved my point about people making up whatever they want instead of actually applying the math and its rules to its system. He basically says his math is wrong. And I agree. Your math, Skipjack, your math is 100% wrong because multiplication requires there to actually be 6 dots. You can't manipulate the way it's being counted and come up with 6. Math won't allow that. Okay, so he says you cannot have that math equation without there being 6 actual units present. And he's correct. You can't get 6 without having 6 actual units. I don't give a shit how you word that. And he basically says, you're making up numbers that do not exist and somehow including them into the equation. The end result is, it doesn't matter what you say or think. The bottom line is, both basic addition and multiplication make it 100% impossible for it to be 6. So there is no possible way under the math rules that you can possibly do what you did. It's impossible. And I agree, it is 100% impossible. You cannot get 6 out of that, no matter what you do. So he proceeds to say here, either basic math prevents that from being done the way you're doing it, or the way you're doing it says that basic math doesn't exist. Either way you look at it, both ways will cancel the other out, and that is true. If you're going to say that 6 without having 6 actual units, you just destroyed addition and multiplication. If you're doing it that way, well, basic math will prevent you from getting 6 from that. But if you're getting 6 from that, you're basically saying basic math doesn't exist. Because basic math requires you. You can't count one thing twice and have 6 and still only have 5 units when basic math says you must have 6. I know I'm pounding that into the ground, but that's what this is about. Addition, all right, so he proceeds to go in and say addition says it's not possible. There is only one group of 2 and one group of 3, which makes 5. Multiplication also says it's not possible. The only possible way for 6 to exist out of 2 and 3 is if there are either 2 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 2, which doesn't exist in the equation. There is one group of 3 and one group of 2, so that is a fact. Now, this person proceeds to say there are only 5 units in this equation, not 6. Not 6. So it's either 3, I don't know why you said that, I think that's a typo. Oh, yeah, okay. So So it's either 3 on the top and 2 on the side, or 3 on the side and 2 on the top. You cannot use 3 on the top and 3 on the side without having 6 actual units. That is a base fact. Because even if you count 1 dot twice, you still only have 5 units. Counting 1 dot twice does not change the number of units that are in there. All right, to top it off, if you still want to argue this, then you're saying basic addition and multiplication are wrong, because according to what you said, you can just make 2 and 3 whatever number you want, and there doesn't need to be 2 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 2, as multiplication says you have to, in order to create 6. I suggest that you stop doing it. I'm not even going to read that comment. He's basically saying that you have no idea what you're doing. If you're doing that, basically, I agree. Skipjack, if you're doing it that way, you don't know what you're doing, because what you're doing is incorrect. We're applying math rules, not human logic here. All right, so anyway, he proceeds to now continue trying to justify this bullshit answer. The multiplication by itself doesn't suffice because of the shared dot. Again, he's going on with the shared dot, totally ignoring that multiplication won't allow a shared dot. Multiplication does not allow shared units. It doesn't. I don't give a shit what you say. You must have 6 units to get the number 6. Period. So, and this is aggravating when you I am aggravated with this, because people are too stupid to get this. If you don't have fucking 6 dots, then it's not fucking 6. I don't give a shit if you count that fucking thing 15 different ways. Rearrange it however you want. You only have 5 things to count. Period. So, all right, so allowing for that, one number has of dots 2 times 3, which is 1 3. Again, that equation is something humans made up. Math, the multiplication. Again, I'll keep stating this. Multiplication prevents that equation from existing. Period. So does addition. Addition and basic addition and multiplication prevent those numbers from existing in that fashion. He goes, there is a corresponding error in your second diagram. It's the left side that has a total of 4 dots, one of which is shared with the top. Again, no. The second diagram shows the only possible way for you to get 6 out of the equation. That's what this is saying. So Skipjack doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about when it comes to this. Hey, how's it going, viewer? I'm just going over, I'm a little steamed here because it amazes me the stupidity level of the math community and professors all over the world, because I agree 100% with exactly what this person's... I'm going over what this person says. And this person's literally breaking down and countering all their arguments using the basic math rules of addition and multiplication. Because he's talking about trying to get the sides or the variables or something, the height, width, and depth off of a rectangle. And instead of paying attention to how many, people are manipulating the way this is being counted and then trying to change the way the laws on mathematics work. And so what these people fail to understand is that the basic math rules of both multiplication and addition prevent any numbers that they're coming up with or how they're working it. It literally prevents them it prevents the problem from being done the way you're doing it. This isn't even the person or me. This is math itself. So they're actually saying either math doesn't exist the way they're doing it, or the way they're doing it is something that they're making up and they're not applying the basic math principle. So no matter which way you look at it, it can't be done. So let me continue here. So now this person goes in and says 88% of math. Again, this person somehow said 88% of the math problems can't be done. I don't know where they got that figure from. And the topic creator actually said this. And by the way, the link to this topic is in the description below the video. And one of my subscribers had sent me this and told me I should look over it because of how I pick things apart. This person with the math community is like me with the gaming community. It's me against them. It's them against them or whatever. So I just happen to agree 100% with what this person's saying. I had to read through the topic to actually understand it. So let me continue here. All right. So if you're having a problem with math, it's not you. The system is flawed. And then humans have fucked the system up. The system itself is fine. Humans fuck the system up by manipulating the way it's done and then changing all of the rules and saying, but they're teaching you basic rules and then throwing all those fucking rules out the window so you can't follow it. It's impossible to follow the way anybody's doing it in the math community. So if you're one of the few people like myself who can't, it's not that you can't do the math. You can't do the math in accordance to the way humans have fucked it up. So let me continue here. And when you start to understand when, this is one example of the millions of fucking problems in math that people have. Because okay, basically this person says, if you're doing math like this, you're doing it wrong. So he basically proving on using math rules, the base math rules of multiplication and addition, that every single person in existence, including every professor and physics person, is not doing math according to the math problems. People are making shit up and adding it to get the math to fit how they want it to, rather than actually taking the numbers and applying it to the problem. That is the issue. So let me continue going on here. So this person continues quoting and says, okay, 80% of math cannot be done. I agree that if you have this example and then you have these same types of issues inside further problems, no matter what math you're doing, then yeah, a lot of math problems literally cannot be done under the concept that they have it under. And I say they as in people in general. Now, this is bizarre because this reminds me of Einstein having an argument with the entire math community because people were doing math wrong. Everyone's like, no, they swear it's right, they swear it's right. And Einstein says, no, there's something fucking wrong with the system. And he wound up proving everybody wrong, no matter how many, the entire world was against him, and he proved that the system is wrong. The system is fucking wrong the way people are doing it, because they're saying here are rules, but then those rules don't exist because there's a separate set of rules. That doesn't work because the original rules supersede the current set of rules. It's very simple. So if you go back, I'm sure the issue about the rectangle will come up, so that whole comment will make sense. All right, so let me continue here. So he says, well, aren't we lucky that the 12% of math, I'm literally going over every single reply in this thread. So aren't we lucky that 12% of math involves landing people on the moon? All right, so this means nothing. Okay, here's the thing that here's the thing that has to be separated from this. Under the current context of the way people are doing it, that works. However, in reality, the math says that will never work because people aren't applying the actual math rules to the math. They're making shit up, adding it to the problem, and then forcing the way math would never allow it to work to get it logically to work. So let me continue here. So he proceeds to, now, keeping in mind, this whole topic was never about asking for help. It was to break down and explain to people why the average person can't do math. It's because of fucking people that are posting shit like this and the way the system works in general. Hey, how's it going, buddy? Welcome to the stream. Just a quick overview. One of my subscribers sent me this link, and I identify with this person because they are with the math community like I am against the gaming community. So I understand how they feel when they're cornered in. And I think the person that linked me this knew I was going to rip it apart, or said, they literally said rip it apart. They knew I was going to go over this. So in this retrospect, I 100% agree with everything that this person's saying. So let me continue here. All right, says this person, I don't know if this is a he or a she, says, I'm going to refer to them as this person. This person proceeds to say, your reply is exactly why people cannot do math. The basic math system and rules explain how the numbers work, and then here people come along completely contradicting the system and making things up instead of actually applying the math system to the problem. A lot of the stuff I'm saying is comments that this person said, so it's not really me talking, it's them. I took it from later on inside the topics. Now, I'm sure new replies have been made since then, but let me continue here. So he quotes Skipjack. So, again, Skipjack, this is the second or third time that this person has explained to Skipjack, you can't remove basic addition and multiplication from this. Skipjack has completely removed addition and multiplication from his equation. He's completely removed it. And you can't do the equation without basic addition and multiplication. And the basic rules of addition and multiplication prevent his equation from even being done. And so he's making shit up and forcing the equation to work when the math says it's not even possible for it to work. So let me continue here. So he proceeds to say, under the basic addition rules, 5 units are 5 and they cannot ever be 6 without having an actual 6th unit being present. So the first diagram won't ever be 6 no matter what you attempt to do to it, hence the reason for the second diagram. So let me back up in case you don't know what the diagram issue is. Okay, in the diagram, this person explains in theory that when you're doing a diagram try to find height, width, and depth on a rectangle is 4 sides. 2 of them are shorter than the other, so it's longer on one side than it is. It's longer on 2 sides than it is on the other. So in this case, the only way to set up the equation is to do it by units. So he basically puts 3 units across the top and then 2 units on the bottom. Now, under the way the math rules state, these are 5 units. You're never going to get 6 out of here because the multiplication literally states you must have either 2 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 2 in order to get 6. In this diagram, you only have 1 group of 3 and 1 group of 2. It doesn't matter how the fuck you count those. People are saying, well, this one corner shares a dot, and they're basically now saying there's 3 on the top and 3 on the side with 5 units. Wrong. The math prevents that. It prevents those numbers from even happening. If you use 3 on the top, you can't use 3 on the side because there's only 5 units. Multiplication requires, it's a requirement for base multiplication to have 6 things present in order for you to get 6. You can't count a number twice and then say there's 6 all of a sudden while still having 5 units. That's the way people do it. But the math prevents people from doing it that way. So the fact of the matter is, if you have math being done like this, people are not even applying basic math in basic addition and multiplication, because if they were, they wouldn't be able to get that equation. But since they are, they're saying basic addition and multiplication don't even exist. You can't do this equation without it, but yet they're ignoring it. Go figure. So let me get that's fucking mind-blowing and how this works, because it's fucked up, and I think this is why this person used a rectangle, because it puts the whole thing into perspective. Okay, so let me see, where was I? Okay, so he basically says under the basic addition rules and things like that. Okay, so that works like that. So the first diagram won't ever be 6 no matter what it is, and that's the whole reason for the second diagram. He's basically using the second diagram to say, if you're going to get 6 out of this diagram, you have to have 6 fucking units, period. You can't count. And now, so he basically said he's using 1 dot. And then this person turns around and says, there are no shared dots. Not sure why you keep ignoring the actual amount of units present, which is which actually matters. He says, I'm not sure what weird, irrational, and nonsense thing you're doing with it. And basically, that's true. He's using bullshit to freaking justify trying to manipulate and bend the way math works to fit his diagram. And the sad part is everybody does it like that. And that's wrong. Math prevents it from happening. Hold on a second. Can you draw this rectangle in Paint and divide the sides to show? You can't, because no matter what you do with it, if you have 3 dots across the top, in order to do a rectangle, the numbers are 2 and 3. Either up and down is going to be longer than the top and bottom, or the 2 sides are going to be longer than the top and bottom are going to be longer than the sides. You either have 2 on the top and 3 on the side, which makes the rectangle this way, or you have 2 on the side and 3 on the top, which makes the rectangle this way. The fact of the matter is you only have 5 units to work with. So if you put 3 across the top, you cannot then put 3 off the side without losing 1 across the top. You cannot use one of those units in 2 different places and have the same amount. It doesn't work. If you're using it in one place, it must be used there. Removing it, and if people are trying to say because it's a corner, it's not being moved. Wrong. It's not that it's not being moved. You're rearranging the way the rectangle is being positioned. It doesn't change the size of the rectangle. It changed the position of it. If you were to put 3, it's a rectangle. If you were to put 3 on top and 3 on the side, you would have a fucking square. It wouldn't be a rectangle. It becomes a square at that point. So there would be no way, nothing you draw it in is ever going to change the fact that you either have it this way or this way, and there's either 2 on the top and 3 on the side. Sorry, 3 on the top, 2 on the side, or 3 on the side and 2 on the top. It doesn't matter what you do with it or anything else. Basic math says 5 is 5. Multiplication says the only way for you to get 6 is to have 2 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 2. And in the case of 5, you only have 1 group of 3 and 1 group of 2 to work with, period. It doesn't matter how you rearrange those, where you place them, doesn't matter anything. You have, putting aside it's a rectangle, 5 units are 5 units. You're never going to change that no matter what you do. You can manipulate the wording on it all you friggin' want. And a good example of this is at the beginning, the person said, if you have a green circle, that circle is green. The color spectrum makes it green. You can't fucking alter that. But what's going on here is the people are saying this circle's green, but later on, greens and green is how the spectrum works. And now you're saying it's blue without actually changing the color from green to blue while still saying it's green. The spectrum prevents that from happening. You can word it any way you want, and you can manipulate it any way you want. It's not going to change the fucking color on it. It's green, period. You're prevented from changing the color by talking about it, or how you change it, or where you... Putting it off to the side isn't going to change the fucking color blue. Putting it on top isn't going to change the color blue. Turning it over isn't going to change the fucking color from, isn't going to change it to blue. It's fucking green no matter what you do to it. Unless you actually change the color of it, it's never going to be fucking green no matter what you do to it. Sorry, it's never going to be blue. So that's the point. That's what they said in this. So let me continue going. Let me continue on here. All right. So he's like, okay, there are no shared dots. When it comes to this, sharing dots is in this particular case, sharing a side and putting it on two different things is a made-up terminology. No, it is. See, here. Let me back up here. It is. Okay. If you go back up, he has two diagrams here. Okay? He has two diagrams. That's one of them. You can barely see it, but I have it highlighted. That's the first diagram, which contains only 5 units that people are somehow getting 6 out of. Because this is about, if you have a rectangular area and you want to find the depth on it, but you only have the 2 sides. The way people do the problem is you would have to multiply both of the sides together to get the depth. That's what you would have to do. That's what he's getting at. But the fact of the matter is, he's point blank saying the problem can't even be done. There's no way for you to get the depth doing it the way people do it, because the math prevents you from doing it. The math prevents the problem from being done the way people are using it to be done. People are turning that into a multiplication problem, and it's not. It's not a multiplication problem, because the multiplication problem literally requires 6. If you're going to get 6 out of that problem, the multiplication rules explicitly state there must be six things to count already present, and you don't. You have 2 and you have 3. You do not have 6. You have 5. That's what he's getting at. Except what you... I'm reading what you're saying, and I may be interpreting this wrong, but what you're saying is a made-up, man-made thing that math won't allow. The math rules won't allow what you just said. It prevents what you said from being happening. It doesn't matter. It's not relevant. The issue here is that this formula, that this whole topic that this person's coming up with, proves that a lot of math problems cannot even be done. It's not that I can manipulate anything any way I want. That doesn't mean the rules allow it to be done. That means I'm manipulating it to force it to do something it literally will never be able to do if you were just to apply the basic numbers to this. If you were to apply multiplication to this problem, it would be 5, never 6, because the rules of multiplication prevent it from ever becoming 6. I can make that number. I can make those 2 numbers. I can make those 5 things be any number I want. I can come up with 55,000 ways to do it. There's still 5 units there. Nothing I come up with matters. The basic mathematic principle prevents any number from it being any other number than what you have for units counted. If there are 5 units, doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter what the math community does. The multiplication rules itself and the addition rules itself prevent it from being any number except 5. The rules themselves prevent it. So it's not even, this isn't even him saying this. He's applying math to the problem. not human logic, how they want the problem to work. He's literally saying multiplication and addition will prevent you from even doing this. The problem can't be done when you're applying multiplication rules to this. Yeah, no, I get that. But what I'm saying is if you wanted to find the height and the width of something, if you want to find the depth, you would use the height and width. All right? You can, but when you want to do that, you have to lay it out in a grid. The point is, the math itself, the rules for how you would go about, how that goes about being done, cannot be done. People do it. They say, oh yeah, it's 2 times 3. It's not. The math prevents it from even being done. So people are like, oh yeah, I can get the depth of this. No, you fucking can't. You can get the depth of it in your own warped way, but the math itself says this can't be done. You can't get the depth of it with those 2 numbers. It's not possible. That's what he's saying. So, all right. So let me go on here. So this person continues to say there are no shared dots. So he's like not sure how and why he keeps ignoring the actual amount of units present is what matters. And B, I'm not going to continue reading that because that's just him talking to the guy. But anyway, or him or her. The second diagram is actually 6, which is true. There are literally 6 units to count. There are 3 units in the top row, and there are also 3 units in the side row because there are 6 actual units present. Neither side shares anything with either side. It's individual and separate from the other. So the top is separate from the side. You can't splice the top and the side together. It doesn't work like that. Carpentry will never work like that. You can't have a corner that's both. It's either a corner for the left or the right or the top and the bottom, or the top and the side. You can't have a top side. It doesn't work like that. There's no such thing as a top side corner or top side side. It doesn't work like that. You can't have a backside side. It's either back or it's side. It's either top or it's bottom. It's either top or it's side. You can't have it both ways, which is why one will never share the other. So he's basically saying, keeps telling him, you're mysteriously somehow getting 6 units out of the first diagram despite there not being any more than 5 actual things to count. So addition makes in the first diagram, addition makes 6 not even possible. Yeah, but that's not seamless. That's a weird fucking terminology for that. Anyway, let me finish this. Multiplication. See, what this person is saying is that in the first diagram, when people are trying to multiply the 2 sides together, they're doing it wrong because the math won't allow you to even do that. Because under the basic addition and multiplication rules, you have to go by how many units are actually countable, not how you manipulate or count the units or how you rearrange them. So, in this case, the first diagram, addition prevents it from being 6 because there's only 5 units. And on top of that, multiplication says 6 can't exist because there aren't 6 units. There's only 5. Multiplication says in order for you, if you want 6, you have to have 6 items here. And so he's asking, how the hell in the world, under the rules of basic math, are you mathematically getting 6 out of the first diagram? Nope, that's not true. No. They can't. No, Matt C. saying that can't happen. The math rules prevent that from happening. They can't share a point. It's not possible. You can't share a point in this. The math prevents it from happening. The math multiplication says that's not possible. The multiplication is, this isn't even me or him saying this. This is the rules of math. You can't tell somebody in math. You can't, let me back this up. You can't teach somebody that 5 is 5 and that multiplication is nothing more than a different way of adding, and saying in order to get 6 out of multiplication, you have two groups of 3 and 3 groups of 5. Teach them that and then throw this at them and say 5 is 6. You're saying 2 plus 3 is 5. I'm sorry, you're saying in this case, in the diagram of that, you're saying 2 plus 3 is 6. Math prevents 2 plus 3 from being 6. You can't multiply it. Well, it's not that you can't multiply it. You can't multiply it and get a greater number than there is countable units. You can't. What you're saying? All right, let me back this up. You are using man-made principle that's being applied to the math. If you apply the actual numbers to the problem instead of what man is trying to apply to the problem, you will find the problem doesn't, that what you just said is made up. That's not how math works. People made that and have succumbed to that, but that's not how math works. That statement that you just said is man-made. Math says that statement doesn't work. People made the statement work because they applied what they did and then manipulated the numbers. But the fact of the matter is, the system itself says the numbers can't be manipulated. The system itself prevents the numbers from being manipulated. It's not that you can't say the numbers are manipulated. The system prevents the numbers itself from being manipulated. You can't have that. Because if you were to have what you just said, you're saying there's no such thing as basic addition or multiplication. You can't remove the rules of multiplication and addition and how they're set up to work from this equation. You can't. If you use what you're saying in this equation, you're removing basic addition and multiplication. Yeah, but that's not the point. This isn't about what the definition of rectangle is. This is about the definition of what multiplication is and how multiplication says it's required in order for it to work. No, you can't all right, if you're going to say what you just said, you're saying there's no such thing as multiplication and addition. You're saying 2 and 3 can be anything you want it to be. If you're going to use multiplication, and the answer to that is going to be 6, there has to be 6 countable units, period. You can't remove multiplication from this equation. Multiplication, if you're going to say 2 times 3 is 6, it's a requirement for there to be 6 actual countable things. You cannot remove that from the equation. That is the rule for multiplication. You cannot say that does not apply to this. Because if you do, you're saying that multiplication doesn't exist. Because you're removing the way multiplication requires it. It's a requirement. You can't even do it without doing it this way. If you have 5 units, if you only have 5 countable things, it will never be 6. Multiplication outright states you can't get it to 6. It's impossible. The system itself prevents you from getting 6. It prevents you. There is no possible way to make 5 countable things 6 under multiplication. It's not possible no matter what you do. The math itself prevents 5 from ever becoming 6. Ever. So if my point, and this is coming from this kid, it's a basic fact that if you are going to state the rectangle that has 2 and 3 on one side is 6, there better be 6 actual countable units inside there, not 5. You can't count 1 twice and say there's 6 numbers and then say it's multiplied. The system says there has to be 6 countable units to begin with in order for it to be 6. You can't change how you want it to be, count something twice, make something up, add it to that, and now say, oh, there's 6 when you only have 5 units. It doesn't matter how you rearrange this. It doesn't matter how you count them. 5 is 5. So I'm going to type into the chat 1. I'm going to type in the chat 5 ones. 2, 3, 4, 5. Nothing you do will change the amount of ones there. I don't care what you say. No, he's not doing anything. He's telling you that there are 5 units present, making multiplication impossible to do to get 6. If there are 5 units, it doesn't matter if you count one of them twice. There's still 5 units. I just typed 5 ones into the chat. Explain to me how you get 6 out of that. Explain to me how there is a sixth number 1 in that equation. Okay, I want you to count, I want you to make those 5 become 6 without actually adding 1 to it. Make those 5 become 6, because this is the exact same thing. Unless you have 6, okay. If you have the rectangular area, it's 2 on the side and 3 across the top. It's 5 units. You cannot get 6 out of that. I don't give a shit how you count it. The point here is, you just said you would have to add 1 to get it. If the equation only has 5 units to count, it will never be 6. Period. There has to be 6 actual countable units present. This is 6. That is the only way you can get 6 out of that. This will never be 6. No matter how you rearrange that, no matter how you want to look at it. 1, 2, this is the equation. You see that, what I just wrote in there? 3 across the top and 2 across the side. Or 3 on the side and 2 across the top. No matter which way you look at it, you have 5 ones. It is not 2 times 3, because there aren't 2 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 2. There's only 1 group of 2 and 1 group of 3. Multiplication requires there to be 2 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 2 in order to get 6, which is why the rectangle equation that he came up with, or this person came up with, is genius, because it proves that people are actually incorrectly doing math, because math will prevent that from happening. The math rule itself says you can't even get that equation. It doesn't work. Math doesn't work like that. Yet people have made this shit up and added it to this and forced it to work, even though the math rules stated it can't work. You can't even get an equation for this. That's the point. So let me continue here, because this gets better. There's other examples that Matt C. gives that totally prevents any arguments on it, and people just argue it anyway. So let me see here. All right. Okay, so Skipjack says, as what you're saying here, 1 can get 6 out of 5, as you put it, by counting, not me, he's saying here. 1 can get 6 out of 5, as you put it, by counting one of the dots twice. That is an incorrect statement. Multiplication says you're not allowed to count the dots, 1 dot twice. You're not even allowed to do it. The multiplication rules state you cannot do that, because doesn't matter if you count one of them twice. You still only have 5 countable things. Counting 1 twice doesn't make 6 units. It just means you're stupid in counting. Okay, so let me finish. All right, this allows the count to reach 6. No, it will never allow the count to reach 6, because multiplication says in order to have 6, you actually have to have either 2 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 2. What this person has done has not produced 2 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 2. All he's done is counted 1 twice, and you still only have 1 group of 2 and 1 group of 3. He hasn't produced a 6th actual unit to create 2 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 2, as multiplication requires it. Counting 1 dot twice does not make 6 units. Multiplication requires 6 actual units to be present in order for the answer to be 6. That cannot be done. That's a man-made fallacy that math says will never happen. So man decided to implement that to force 6 without actually having 2 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 2. And that's wrong, because that's saying multiplication doesn't exist. You can't remove how multiplication works from this equation and have it be right. It's not possible, because if you say that, you're not doing multiplication. You're just making shit up. No, Matt C. is saying you can't do this. Everybody's arguing with him. What I'm saying is Matt C. is the one who is proving that what everybody's doing in the world with these problems are wrong. That's what he's doing. He's not proving that this can be done. He's saying this can't be done and everybody is wrong. And I agree with him because this is 100%, what he's saying is 100% correct. 5 is 5. Counting one number twice does not magically produce 6 actual units and then say it's multiplied. Multiplication requires 6 actual things to be counted in order for it to be 6. Because if you count one number twice and still only have 5, it's still not 6. Multiplication prevents it from happening. Prevents it from being 6. It's not, this isn't even me or him. This is the math rules themselves. So as you can see with this, people aren't even applying the math rules. They're making shit up and doing whatever the fuck they feel like it. Because if you were to actually apply the math rules that people say is how multiplication is done and addition is done, you will find that it can't be done. The fact that people are doing this proves that everybody in the existence in the world is doing whatever they feel like it without applying basic math. And then saying, oh, the rules are different. No, the rules are not different. You're just refusing to accept that the rules can't work like this. Okay, so let me continue here. So he basically winds up saying he wants an explanation in math terms how you're getting 5 out of 6. He's basically saying if you don't actually have 6 units, stop saying the answer's 6. Stop twisting the context out of whack. Either apply the basic rules of multiplication or shut up is basically what he's saying. Okay, so anyway, he's like Skipjack's trying to again justify his bullshit answer. He's saying confusion was caused by considering a square with m dots down the left side and m dots along the top with 1 dot shared where, m equals 3 is doing some fucked up math equation. He's trying to justify explaining why he's not using multiplication while trying to use... He's saying he's using multiplication without actually using multiplication, because if you're using multiplication, it doesn't matter if you're counting 1 dot twice. Multiplication goes by how many actual countable units are there, not how you manipulate the count. So anyway, let me finish this. In a rectangle with m dots, okay, confusion was caused by this, and so basically it's going to be written... So he's doing some fucked up math, he's just being stupid. The number 2 is used as a whatever, I don't even care what they're saying. So he basically, Matt C cut them all off and basically cut this one section out. He says that Matt C just basically says, what you just quoted there, one can get 6 out of 5, as you put it, by counting one of the dots twice. Matt C says, that isn't math rules. That's demented opinion and nonsense. You cannot remove basic math from this and just do whatever you want. And Matt C's right. You can't remove it because... But Skipjack is removing the basic multiplication. He's saying, oh, 1 counted twice, so I can use another 3 here and 3 here with having 5 units. Multiplication won't even allow that. Multiplication says that's not even possible. All right. Again, Matt C says, I guess the issue here is, and why this is being pounded in here, is because they're going back and forth. These people are going back and forth trying to dictate you don't use multiplication, and multiplication doesn't exist while using multiplication. And then the only person that's applying the multiplication rules here to the actual equation here and doing multiplication is Matt C. The rest of them are not doing multiplication, because if they were, they would agree with Matt. So let me see here. He says, he's like, that's not even math, dude. You're just making shit up. Because the math states you have to have 6 actual units for it to be multiplication to get 6. You can't get 6 out of 5 no matter what you do unless you have 6 actual countable units. And in the equation, you only have 5. So again, this is getting beat into the ground because that's what this is revolving around. These guys are failing to accept the fact that you only have 5 countable units. I don't know what it's going to take to get it across to these guys. So anyway, he goes, oh, this was classic. This is the comment that I think is the balls. This comment shuts down any fucking argument anybody can have on this. He goes, it's the comment after the rules of both basic addition and math. All right, so Matt C goes, the rules of both basic addition and multiplication literally prevent what Skipjack has said, from ever even being possible. Basic math rules state that the only possible way to get 6 is to actually have 6. This is fucking great. He proceeds to tell the person, I'd like to see you pay for something that cost $1.50, then hand the cashier 5 quarters telling them to count one of the quarters 2 times, so there will be a total of $1.50. He says, let me know when you wind up with 6 quarters doing that. If so, make a video of doing it and show it happening. That comment is the fucking balls. That is literally ends the debate on why you can't make 5 become 6. It's not possible. If you only have 5 units, counting one of them, if you have 5 quarters, counting one of them twice will not make $1.50. It won't. It will make, it's still $1.25, no matter how many times you count it. That is fucking brilliant. All right, so he says you will still only have 5 quarters no matter what you say. The same applies to this problem. Nothing you say matters. The basic rules of math tell you that what you're doing is not possible. All right. Now we have this person. He's quoting something, and he says, this is what happens when you're asked to find the area of a rectangle, but you misinterpret the area as half the perimeter instead. That's not even a valid comment because that has nothing to do with this. This has to do with how many units are present in the equation. How did he prove his point wrong? If you're going to state the rectangle problem is done like this, then you're stating you can go into a store with 5 quarters and convince the cashier that it's 6 by counting one of the coins twice. That's what you're saying. You can't apply it to the rectangle and not apply it to the quarter principle. All right, let me go to page 2 here. Okay, so now Skipjack proceeds to try to say, counting is basic arithmetic. It uses simple logical principles. Your assertion that something is nonsense doesn't mean that it's nonsense, only that you've posted the assertion, especially when you've not posted a detailed logical argument to support the assertion. So he's just talking out his ass now because he's caught in a fucking corner, and he realizes that the quarter argument just shut him down. If objects are counted and the count reaches 6, it doesn't follow that there are 6 distinct objects unless the object in the count has been counted just once. That is 100% false because that's what basic addition is. Unless you have 6 actual countable objects, then you don't have 6. It'll never be 6 ever. So that statement that he just said is false. He's like, perhaps... So they're now trying to argue, oh, you know, the area. No, we're talking about the area of this and the area. No. How many units do you have countable? That's how many units you have. You cannot change the amount of countable units because you manipulate the way you're counting them. All right, so let me continue here. He's like, describing a rectangular section with dots is misleading. If you use segments instead, or you place the dots in the middle of hypothetical segments, there is no fallacy in the problem. Yes, there is, because it doesn't matter how you arrange the fucking 5 dots. You only have 5 dots. So this is what gets me. So people are failing to accept that it doesn't matter how you count 5 objects. In the end, you're going to have 5. There is no amount of counting or manipulation or setup in a diagram. You can set these things up in a circle. You're only going to have 5. If you set them up in a line, you only have 5. If you set one up in each, you set 4 up and then 1 in the middle, you still only have 5. It doesn't matter what pattern you set them up in. It doesn't matter what diagram you set them up in, how you set them up, or how you fucking count them. In the end, there's only 5, period. It's never going to amount to 6 no matter what you do. The math prevents it from being 6, period. Unless you have 6 actual countable objects, it's never going to be 6 just because you manipulate the way it's counted. That's what's going on here. People are refusing to actually apply the actual math to the number of units. They're literally making shit up and ignoring multiplication. Every single person that says you can get 6 out of 5 is not doing multiplication. They're literally saying multiplication doesn't exist. Because again, multiplication requires, it's a requirement to actually have 6 countable things in order for 2 times 3 to become 6. 5 countable things will never become 6 no matter how many times you count it, just because you're counting 1 twice. It does not make 6 countable objects. And that is a base fact. Math prevents you from getting any other number except for the amount of countable units there are. There has to be 2 groups of 3 or 3 groups. There actually has to be 3 groups of 2 or 2 groups of 3, which makes 6 total units in order for 2 and 3 to become 6, which would be 2 times 3. 2 groups times 3 groups is 6. But when you have 5, it's not multiplication. It's 1 group of 2 plus 1 group of 3. Or you can multiply that, but it's still going to be 5. All right. So now, so he proceeds to go in and says, all people are doing is making excuses, I think he meant to say excuses, and manipulating how the counting of an amount of objects is done. I am the only person in this thread who has actually used the real rules of math. Has used the real rules math. I don't know. I think he meant to say rules of math, which is true. He's the only person doing it. Everybody is saying, no. He's like, listen, multiplication tells you it must be done like this. You can't do what you're doing because multiplication stops you from doing it. If you're doing it that way, then you're not using multiplication. It's no matter which way you look at it, they're doing it wrong. And so he proceeds to go in. How any number of objects is counted. I think he meant how many. How any number of objects is counted does not change how many objects there actually are. 5 objects cannot ever become 6 objects without actually increasing the number of objects from 5 to 6. The fact is, the math rules prove that all anybody here is doing is making things up to get the math to fit how they want it to work instead of actually using the math and its rules to solve the problem. The problem is and always will be addition, never multiplication, in this particular case. I think you should say this problem. All right, so anyway, so here we go. There are 5 dots, 3 and 2 or 2 and 3, as you observed, in your first diagram and 6 in the second diagram. They are different diagrams that have different number of dots and haven't been proved to correspond to the same rectangle. It doesn't fucking matter. Again, people are so hell-bent. This is literally like talking to the fucking gaming community. I'll put up a video showing no instructions on the screen, and everybody totally ignores that and starts saying everything else except saying, yeah, you're right, there's no instructions on the screen. If I open up a game and say there's no instructions on the screen, there's no fucking instruction on the screen. It's not even a debate. It's a base fact. If people are going to ignore that by saying, you're dumb, or this doesn't matter, or, well, you did this in this game, none of that shit fucking matters. The fact of the matter is there's no instructions. These people are hell-bent on trying to dictate, well, it's the same rectangle. None of that shit fucking matters. What matters is how many countable units are present in this. That is the only thing that matters. When you're dealing with countable units, the math has to be done and can only be done one way. Going outside that parameter means you're not doing math. You're doing whatever the fuck you want. And that's what's going on here. That's what these two are doing. I think both sides are trying to say the same thing, but they're not actually realizing that they're not doing it. So let me continue here. He's like, to use the real rules, you also need clear definition. No, you don't need the terms you're using. 5 countable units cannot be 6. That's pretty fucking clear. Like, this kid's dense. It's either he's too fucking wrapped up in the math. This is like me trying to explain the video from my Mass Effect 3 video. That kid fucking removed me from my friends list. Not that I give a shit, but he unsubscribed to me or something because he asked me to make a video, and then when I did, he was so fucking, I said at the beginning of the video too, he's so wrapped up in how the things work that he can't unwrap his head around to see what I'm talking about. And I think that's what Skipjack is doing here. He can't unwrap his head around how he has been doing this and how the community does it to realize that none of the shit he's talking about fucking matters. What matters is there are countable units, and multiplication says those countable units have to be done a specific way. So if you have the number of countable units in an equation, it's not fucking relevant how they're set up. What matters here is the multiplication says it must be done this way. To go outside that parameter means you are not doing the math. You're saying you're doing whatever the fuck you want and not applying the math itself. It's as simple as that. There is no rule to that. The rule is how many are there or how many are there. That's how you break down the math. So let me continue here. All right, so he's just, I'm not even going to continue reading this because he's just harping on the shape of something instead of paying attention to the fact that 5 will never become 6 no matter how you count them. That's really what should have been said here. So he's like, okay. He goes, okay, so he quotes something Matsi says. You cannot have both 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom with only a total of 5 actual units. And then he turns around and has the balls to ask, why is that relevant? given that neither of your diagrams has 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom. Yeah, his fucking diagram has 3 on top and 1, or 2 on the side, or 3 on the side and 2 on top. How do you mean, what does that even fucking mean? No, alright, he says 3 on top and 3 on the bottom. So you're right. They don't have 3 on top, and only the second diagram has 3 on the top and 3 on the, neither one of them have anything on the bottom. It's 3 on the top and 3 on the side. I don't know, I think he misquoted that. You're right. They don't have anything, so I don't even know what the fuck he's talking about at this point. So the second diagram contains 6 dots, 3 along the top and a separate 3 along the side. That's because there's 6 fucking units. There's nothing to suggest that this diagram should be considered to only have 5 actual. That doesn't fucking matter. The second, I don't even know. All right. So Matt C. then proceeds to say in here, right, he says, the original point of this topic has gotten lost, which is to explain and show the exact reason why people who say they cannot do math cannot do it. Instead, people are too hung up with cramming an incorrect, corrupted, very flawed system into existence and then claiming it's fine. And that's exactly what everybody's doing. Everybody's reply is showing and proving Matt C. right here. Because what happens is Matt C. posted something that says, here is the problem that Mathis has. You are told the rules, and then you're told those rules don't apply, and then people are making shit up without following the rules, saying you're following the rules, and then saying you don't want to learn. That's what he said, and that's been proven. And he says another problem that people have with this is that when they follow the rules, they're being told they're wrong, and all anybody does wind up doing is they're hung up on saying this is right, instead of taking the time to explain to the person, yeah, this doesn't really make any sense. Wow, that doesn't make any sense. So instead, what you have here is exactly what Matt C. did. He pointed out the whole, it's not just the topic itself. Matt C. very cleverly put this together because he showed that not even explaining it in explicit detail and showing that you can't remove basic math from this, people still did it, and it didn't give a shit about that because they're so hell-bent on telling them how to do a problem instead of, he's not asking how the problem's done, he's showing what's wrong with the fucking system that people are doing. And so it's amazing how the replies that people have are included on why people are having a problem doing math, because nobody wants to pay any attention to the fact that they're doing it wrong. You're telling somebody one thing, then doing another, and never explaining how you even arrived at that, and just contradicted yourself. You can't teach somebody basic math works like this and then not apply it. But then at the same time saying you're applying it. That's the color code. You can't say this is fucking green. Oh, you know, it's explicit, and then say, oh, by the way, we're not making this green right now. This is really blue, without actually changing the color, saying it's fucking blue while maintaining it's green. That doesn't work. That's fucking nonsense. But that's exactly what people are doing here. All right. So anyway, he's like, okay, the original point of this topic is get lost. And then, all right. So again, most of what I said came from this. I'm summing this up. He said, and Matt C. says, when people are taught basic math, basic meaning, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, they are taught very basic concepts on what make those the way they are, which is why I used addition and multiplication. In addition, the number 5 is 5. There isn't any changing that no matter what you try to do to it, how it's arranged or how it's counted. In the end, it's still 5. That's a base fact. Multiplication is just a shortcut to adding. So in order for 2 and 3 to be 6, then it's a requirement, or it requires 6 actual things to be counted, which is either 2 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 2, which again is because there are 6 actual things present to do it with. And multiplication tells you it's impossible to get 6 without there actually being 6 actual things to put together. Same as revered? Oh, all right. I think he meant to write. I think he's trying to say reversed. Same as reversed. I'm going to say reverse for now. Same as reversed. You cannot make 6 items become 5 without actually removing one of the items itself. That's base fact. That's how math works. So he proceeds to say, and that brings me to this topic. People replying in this thread are failing on all ends to put the basic addition and multiplication to practice, because everyone is totally ignoring and he types this in caps to specify what he's talking about. By the way, how do you doing, viewer? I'm going over a link that one of my subscribers sent to me because they knew I was going to rip this apart. And I don't know who this person is. But this person is fucking genius because he's basically telling the entire math community and world that they are wrong by using one simple equation that I find fascinating. And I completely agree with this person. I completely 100% agree with this person that people have screwed up math and aren't even using math the way math is designed to be used. Because if it does, it makes a lot of problems in math not even possible to do, but people are doing them. So let me continue here. And then, so basically he says, and that brings me to this topic. I don't know if this is a boy or a girl, but this guy's freaking genius. Or this person's genius. All right. People replying this thread are feeling on all ends to put the basic addition and multiplication to practice because everyone is totally ignoring the fact that there are only 5 things present in the first diagram and focusing on the size and what things are being called and manipulating the counting process. The term isn't relevant, and neither is the size of the area, along with whatever other manipulation tactics people want to try to say and use. The only factor that matters when you're doing multiplication is how many units are actually, I put actually in there, how many units are present, which is where the basic addition and multiplication gets used. In other words, Matt C. saying you cannot do multiplication any other way than stating how multiplication rules itself work. It doesn't matter what problem you do them in. Multiplication rules apply regardless. So the basics of this take precedence over any other type of manipulation or anything else that anybody wants to use. So let me continue here. He goes, which brings me to the whole problem with math in general. You cannot teach someone basic addition and multiplication, saying here are the rules and this is how it works, then later on remove that from the problem and totally go against the basic foundation of what they were just taught on how the system works. And that's true. That right there is the exact reason why people can't do math. People keep saying this is how the rules work. You don't use them here. This is a different set of rules. Then that's not a set of fucking rules. That's you doing whatever the fuck you want and removing the rules from the equation. Because basically, to sum it up, to the viewer that just joined, this person brought up a rectangle for a reason, because it's genius the way they did it, because they set it up in a diagram, which is the only way you can do the diagram, and then proved that if you're going to do multiplication, the answer is not the answer that people are arriving at. It can't be. Math prevents that from happening. So what happens is, if people are arriving at an answer that math says not possible to do, they're not using math. They've literally said basic multiplication and addition don't even exist because they're doing something that the math won't even allow them to do. So all of the equations that they're coming up with in the math formulas and everything else, the basic rules prevent those from even happening. So man is making shit up and adding it to get the math to fit how they want it to, rather than actually applying the math to the problem, which means either the math prevents what they're doing from being possible, or they're forcing it to go in and then getting rid of the basic math system. So no matter which way you look at it, it's wrong. So let me continue here. All right. And so under the addition and multiplication rules, you're taught that the basics on how this would work. That means the number 6 cannot be obtained from the first diagram, because in the first diagram, he basically has the numbers 2 and 3, and he says it's a rectangle. So a rectangle is either, if you have, he uses 5 dots to represent it because the numbers 2 and 3. 2 on one side, 3 on the other. So either the rectangle is going to be this way or it's going to be this way. So you either have 3 on the side and 2 on the top, or 3 on the top and 2 on the side. No matter which way you look at it, you only have 5 countable units. The argument people are trying to do is that they're counting 1 unit twice and then saying it's 6, which is false because multiplication won't allow that. Multiplication literally says there must actually be 6 countable units present in order to get 6. The answer to that is 5. So if you're going to use it as a multiplication problem, it's 5 times itself, which is 5, because it doesn't matter how many times you manipulate, how you count the numbers or the dots, or it doesn't matter the order you set them up in, as Matt C. explained. It doesn't matter how you organize it. 5 is 5. That'll never change. The basic math and addition states that. Multiplication states you can't get 6 out of 5 unless you actually add an actual countable unit. Counting 1 unit twice does not make 5 6. The multiplication prevents that from happening. So that's the argument here in this. All right, so let me continue. All right, so he's saying under the addition and multiplication rules, you're taught as the basics and how these work. That means that the number 6 cannot be obtained from the first diagram, no matter what is attempted. Counting 1 2 unit, I think he meant to say 1 unit 2 times, is not math. It's nothing but a manipulation tactic that fails to actually apply the rules of basic addition and multiplication, which is true, it doesn't. So, but of course it appears to be possible. That's because it's just been manipulated. However, when you revert back to the actual math itself, that manipulation isn't possible because the math system itself will literally prevent 5 units from ever becoming 6 without adding one more unit itself, which now makes a total of 6 things present to count. He proceeds to say, I can count 5 things any way I choose, which allows me to create and come up with any number I want. But in the end, it's not relevant what I choose to do. The basic addition and multiplication rules will literally prevent me from having any number except 5. Just because I manipulated the counting process does not change the fact that there are still only 5 things to count. So unless there are 6 actual things to count, then no one in the world is ever going to actually say that the first diagram can amount to any number except for 5 because of counting manipulation. Basic addition and multiplication work a certain way. Manipulating a counting process does not get around that. And so he proceeds to say, rational, insane human beings are not going to waste time with that type of sheer stupidity and utter nonsense, nor are they ever going to accept it either. So you've already lost them, and now the person is never going to be able to do math. And what really gets me is how all anyone does is blame the person for not wanting to learn or being stubborn instead of accepting that the people manipulating counting to get around and avoid having to use basic math. So if math is an absolute, which 5 is 5, meaning I think that's what he means. Because you can't, the numbers are set in stone. You can't change them. Like you can't say 3.5 is 17. 3.5 is 3.5. It's an absolute number. How many units in that make up the number? You can't change that. That's an absolute. Absolutes can't have contradictions or exemption. If you have, I think he's going to cover this. So it says, if math is an absolute, then that means the first diagram, because there are only 5 things to count, and thus cannot be anything but 5, which makes it an addition problem, not multiplication. Multiplication will require there to be 6 actual things to count, as the rules state, and not just some manipulation tactic, because that's what it's coming down to. This is it's a counting manipulation tactic that's changing the number, not the math. People are manipulating the way it's being counted to change the number instead of actually dealing with the number itself. That's not math, that's a manipulation tactic. And I think that's important here. So in diagram 1, if there are only 5 things to count, then the math system itself is telling you that the answer is 5. Manipulation counting can create any number it wants to, but the number manipulation counting comes up with is 100% wrong because the basic math system itself says it is. And that's all there is to it. So he proceeds to go on. He's like, well, again, this is just people being stupid. I don't know what the fuck this person wrote. All right, so, all right, Jeff M1 says, because the OP is, I know what he wrote, but basically, what Jeff M wrote is that he's basically, I don't know whether he's pissed off at the person or what, but Jeff M is one of these, I'm gonna compare him to a Steam user. Nope, that's it. Math is right, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter how many, Matt C has posted numerous facts to prove there's no possible way for people to do that problem and get the answer they're arriving at. Matt C has proven it. He's proven it by using the actual math itself. And he's proven that all people are doing is manipulating the way it's being counted to change the answer instead of actually applying the math. He's proven it. But Jeff M is one of these people that's not a fact, that's not proof, math does it. He's one of these people that do that. So he's a Steam user. So, all right. So anyway, Top Squark or whatever it is says, on the level that he quotes something, which brings no point to the problem. You cannot teach someone basic math. Okay, so basically he quoted that segment. And I bet he's quoting me saying, he's quoting me, oh my God. He's quoting Matt C. I can't even speak. He's quoting Matt C. saying, if you're going to teach somebody something, you can't turn around and then tell them to do something different with what you just taught them while you're saying this is the base system. So, what Top Score, I feel like they're talking to me. I really fucking do. So anyway, on the level that you appear to be working on, this is undoubtedly true. But advanced mathematics, I'm going to cut down here because he cuts that. I'll read it. He says, because of advanced mathematics makes serious use of generalizing these ideas, and some very, very applicable results ensue. Advanced physics would be nowhere unless we can use this material. Your computer, for example, is made by knowledge of these extended algebraic equations. He's like, Dan. So Dan's trying to explain something, and Matt C cuts him off. I know, like I said, I already read through some of this. Some of these replies I've literally embedded into my head because they're just so good. All right. So what Top Squawk is basically saying, he hasn't quoted saying this, and Matt C turned around and says, well, you cannot ever remove basic math rules from the equation. If you're saying, he says, because the basics are what make that possible. So when you say things like accept advanced math, you've instantly removed basic math rules from the math, and now making, at this point, you're not even using math. You're making stuff up to fit how you want the stuff to work instead of actually applying the rules itself of math. So here's the thing. It doesn't matter if this is just a small multiplication thing. The multiplication is applied the way multiplication is applied no matter where you apply it. You can't say, but advanced mathematics do this with the multiplication. That's wrong. Multiplication states advanced mathematics must do what it says. This is why the base rulings and the base rulings, oh my god, I sound like a fucking game referee. The base rules for math and the way it says it to be done supersedes any math that you can possibly come up. It doesn't even matter. This is a base formula that will prevent you from doing this basic math any other way. So if you're changing the way the base math system works, then you're not using base math and you're doing whatever the fuck you want and saying, fuck the base principle, it doesn't exist. So if that doesn't exist, how the fuck are you arriving? If you have A, and A says this is how this works, and this is the way it is, and then you have later on C and then J, and J doesn't use this, J can't even exist, because this, A, sets the standard for how J gets done. J cannot turn around and say, well, we can't, this doesn't use what you, it doesn't work that way. Math would never work that way. You cannot remove the basic equation. So the base rules on how it works. So if anybody's not, in the particular case of finding an area in this case, if you are not applying how multiplication works, then you're not doing math. Because multiplication requires you to do this. It's a requirement. You can't remove that. You can't say, well, multiplication doesn't work like this in this situation. Then multiplication doesn't work at all. Because the baseline is what allowed that to happen. That's really what this comes down to. So he's basically saying the basic math rules cannot ever be removed from anything because they are what make up the way things work. So when you say things like accept advanced math, you're removing basic math rules from math and then just doing whatever the fuck you want. And then it basically makes everything you just said totally incorrect and false and can't work. And then I basically quoted, then he has quoted, I can't even freaking speak today. I'm saying I have it quoted because I'm quoting this. You have to excuse me. I'm fucking tired. I literally feel like I'm talking. This is me talking to people. So then Matt C. My name is Matt, by the way, just so you know that. That's my real name. And so I keep saying I have myself quoted, and it's not quoted. That's like, wow. All right, so anyway, the thing here is that then he has this quoted, and it says, one thing you failed to include is that multiplication is impossible without addition, which is true. This person says, with the non-negative integers, here's the definition of multiplication, except he doesn't have addition in that. You can't do addition. You can't do multiplication without addition because multiplication is addition. It's just another way of doing it. That's all it is. It's a shortcut to adding. That's all it is. And it cannot be removed. He basically says multiplication is impossible without addition because multiplication is addition. It cannot be removed from the equation. And so the only thing he's accomplished, or Jeff M1 has accomplished with that little rant of yours, is verify exactly what I said right from the beginning. You're not using math, but manipulation tactics to force math to work in a manner the basics will not allow you to do. So the basics don't allow him to do that, yet he did it anyway, so he's not using the basics. Furthermore, that little setup you did does not allow a diagram that only has 5 things to count to somehow magically now equal 6. In order to get the number 6 from that diagram, then the diagram itself literally requires 6 actual things to be present to count. And it's true. This diagram, this fucking layout he has here, does not allow something that only is 5 countable units to now somehow magically have 6. That no matter what you do to it, it's not going to change. All right, so he goes, there's an answer to that. In math, we study logical consequences of sets of rules when we study counting number. All right, sorry, I ran that together. Let me restart that. There's an answer to that. In math, we study the logical consequences of sets of rules. And he has that italicized. When we study the counting numbers 1, 2, 3, we use one set of rules. When we study the real numbers, we use a different set of rules. Whatever area of math we're working in, there's a set of rules, and we work out the consequences of those rules. But mathematics are not bound by any particular set of rules. In fact, the rules are historically contingent. I can't even pronounce that word. Contingent. Oh, sorry, contingent. Wow, I can't even freaking read this. In fact, the rules are historically contingent. In the Middle Ages, people didn't believe in negative numbers or 0 or really crazy things like the square root of -1. Over the years, all of these things have become a normal part of everyday math. So math is a historically contingent human activity. It seems as if you are comparing it to some imaginary perfection and saying math isn't perfect. Well, there's math and then there's math. We might mean math as in God's math, the Platonic perfection of idealized math, which every question has an answer. If Gödel shows that even if Gödel shows that there might not be a proof, I can't even fucking read this. Even if Gödel shows that there might not be a proof from a given system of rules. Wait, I said that wrong. Okay. In the Platonic perfection ideal math, in which every question has an answer, even if Gödel showed that there might not be proof. Okay, so he's saying there is an answer to everything, even if the Gödel rules show that there isn't. Okay. Wow, I couldn't even read that. Maybe God's math exists, or maybe there is no such thing. Maybe math is nothing more than a formal game played with marks on paper. Who knows? But compare God's math, which we can imagine existing whether or not it actually exists, to human math. God's math is eternal, and human math is what's trendy in the math journals. So you have to be careful which math you're against. Or perhaps he's basically being scriptural here. What he's saying is, what he's basically getting at doesn't have anything to do with math. He's basically being spiritual and scriptural and religious here. So let me go on to page 3. I'm not saying don't believe in God or anything else, but that really doesn't have anything to do with the issue here. This is man's math being used against man's math. Just prove the way man's math is working doesn't work. The way people are doing it is wrong. Doesn't matter where they came from. The way people are doing it is wrong. Okay, so Matt C. Me, no, I'm just kidding. Matt C. says, after he quotes, we use one set of rules, he says, I'm stopping you right there. That system states how the whole thing operates. Once you have taught the baselines, what I said, the basics are what allow the advance to become possible. You can't all of a sudden get to the advance and then say, well, we're going to do something different than this says. That doesn't work that way. All right, so anyway. And so he quotes the second part of it. When we study the real numbers, we use a different set of rules. Matt C. says, except now you just contradicted the entire system and rendered it impossible to do. If math is an absolute, it cannot change the original set of rules and or not apply or use them just because the circumstances change. And if he wants to get religious, I actually heard a really good comment in a movie. There was a priest and a couple people in a room. They were going to get killed. And the priest knew something that was going to help them get out of it, but the priest didn't say anything because what he said was, my devotion does not change just because the situation deems convenient. And I thought that was great genius because that applies to this. You can't, just because you have the circumstances change does not change the rules. Right, exactly. Here's the thing. It doesn't change the fact that it's level 1. Doesn't matter what you equip it on. It's still level 1. So what he's going on here is what Matt C says is that you just contradicted yourself. The entire system is rendered impossible to do. If math is an absolute, it cannot change the original set of rules and or not apply or use them just because the circumstances changes. Just like the priest says, my devotion doesn't stop, or I don't use my devotion only when the situation deems convenient. I use it whether it's bad or good, because the original system doesn't change just because the circumstances change. That's key. And so the original set of rules prevent the numbers from being used any other possible way except the original way they are shown to work. And that's a base fact, because the original way shows they work is how that system works. You can't change how the system works just because you put it in a different math problem. Multiplication is going to be multiplication. It's going to be 2 sets of 3 or 3 sets of 2 to come up with 6. It's always going to be that way. Just because you put it into a diagram that doesn't actually have the depth doesn't mean you can manipulate and change the way the system works just to fit the system. The original rules take precedence, and they must be applied, which they're not. People are manipulating the counting to get the rules to work. They need to just apply the rules. So that's one of the many, many reasons why people have a problem doing math, because they can't do it under the way that people are doing it. So let me continue. So somebody goes, whatever area, he goes, somebody, Nash whatever the fuck this guy's name is, whatever area of math we're working in, there's a set of rules. He quoted him what he said. There's a set of rules, and we work out the consequences of those rules. Matt C says, sorry, that's impossible, and the whole problem with the way man wants to use and abuse the system. The original set of rules set the baseline and foundation for how all those numbers work. They cannot ever be removed, changed, or made to be used in a different way to change the outcome. Addition works a very specific way, and multiplication works the same way addition does, because multiplication is addition. It's just another way of doing it. So when you have 5 things to count, both addition and multiplication outright prevent 5 from being anything else other than 5. That's how it works. You can't change 5 into 6 because you put that in a different problem. It doesn't work. People do it, but it's wrong. All right, so to say this is how this works and then go ahead and say, well, no, it doesn't work like this, you're saying that it doesn't work like that at all. You can't change the rules and then expect people to follow them and understand what the fuck you're talking about. Either use the system all the way through or don't use it. This is why math is all fucked up. Man has fucked up the system beyond belief. All right. So for people trying to say 5 can become 6 because of some counting manipulation, then they have literally just removed both addition and multiplication completely from the problem, and instead are now just doing whatever they feel like in order to get it to work how they want it to, even though the system's rules say they're wrong. All right, I got news for people. Because of how the baseline foundation and rules of addition and multiplication are set up, then there is absolutely no possible way that the system itself will ever allow 5 things to become 6 because of manipulating the way those 5 things are counted. And that's a base fact. And that's what people are doing in this. They're manipulating the way it's counting to try to change the way the outcome would normally be when the base rule says, I don't give a shit how you're fucking manipulating that. You're not going to change how many units are here just because you fucking counted it fucked up. Okay. He proceeds to say, I have a formula that makes 1 + 1 3. I'd like to see that. So I guess that makes it 3, right? Hey, I manipulated the system to make it fit the same exact way that people are manipulating 5 things to become 6. I really am. However, if I presented that and broke it all down in detail, showing exactly how it was done, all anybody here would do is tell me it doesn't work like that. But yet, you're all saying it does. Because of what I'm using it on? If the math system prevents 1 plus from 1 from ever equaling 3 because the outcome was manipulated, then the math system will also prevent 5 from ever becoming 6 through manipulation as well. In other words, this person makes a good point. Matt C makes a very good point. You can't manipulate it and say it works this way, but when somebody comes along and manipulates it the same way you're doing it, you tell them it's wrong. You can't manipulate it where you feel like manipulating it and say it's right one way and not the other when both sides are doing the exact same thing. Well, here's the thing. Multiplication, the way Matt C described it, multiplication is exactly correct. It's actually adding. It's just another way to add. It's a shortcut to adding. Because if you have 6 digits, you have 2 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 2. It's 6. 2 times 3 is 6, or 3 times 2 is 6. But when you only have 5 units, it can't be 2 times 3 because you don't have 2 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 2. You have 1 group of 2 and 1 group of 3. That is why it's not multiplication. Multiplication requires a breakdown in that fashion in order to be done. That's why multiplying a number by itself becomes itself, because you only have 1 group of that number. So the number as a whole, when it's odd, deals with this. That's why it doesn't matter how many units make up that it doesn't matter how many units are in that number. It's the whole number itself that is the issue. So how you rearrange, you can have them, like I said, you can have them spread out all over the place. If you only have 5 countable units, then the number is 5. Doesn't matter what the fuck you do to it. I can manipulate 5 to be whatever. So, Matt C doesn't talk about this, but I do. And so what I basically say is that if you're going to go on that route, then I can make 3 be on all sides of the cube and make it freaking 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 and make it 12. If you really want to go that route, it's 12. Because I can take, if you're going to use 3 on top and use 1 on the top and then use that 1 on the side for 3, well, I can take those same 3 and leave them there and put them on the other sides as well. So now I have 3, 3, 3, and 3, which would be 12. That's no fucking different. I mean, it's no different what I just did there. Or if you really want to get technical, the way people are saying it, and I don't think Matt C says this, is that if you're going to count one of the dots twice, you're not counting the dot. That's not counting the dot. Let's manipulate this even further. Let's say it's a total of 5. So if you're going to count 1 5 2 times, it's actually 10 because 5 times 2 is 10. That's what people said. You're using one number twice. So the number itself is 5. Not how many units make up for that. Not how many things are make up for 5, but it's the 5 itself. So if you're going to say you're going to use one number twice, well, the number's 5. And if you're going to use 5 twice, it's 10. I mean, I can manipulate this the same way they are, but I'll be told that's wrong. But yet that's what they're doing. They're making shit up to add into this. So let me continue. So now you got Top Squawk being stupid again. All right, so your computer doesn't work. Look at it this way. It's 9 a.m. and you have an important meeting 4 hours from now. Is your appointment at 13 a.m. or 1 p.m.? Rewrite the problem for military time. Hold on a second. Well, here's the base rule here's the base ruling in algebra. Anything by a number that's small is always multiplied. That's the base rule for it. So you'd have to know what x is. If they don't give you what x is, then you can't solve it. It's unsolvable. Because if they're going to say that's multiplied, x is not a number, it's a letter. You can't multiplication. Math only applies to numbers. The letters in math are actually variables. But when you're talking about math, yes, as a whole, as an umbrella on the whole, you're talking about variables and numbers. But when you're talking about multiplication, you can say you're going to multiply the variable, but the variable itself is actually a number. So you're not multiplying, in that case, what you just wrote in the chat, you're not multiplying 3 by a letter. You're multiplying it by the actual variable, which is the number. So it's a number multiplied by a number. So when you actually break it down, it's a number multiplied by whatever number it is. It's not a letter, it's a variable, but that variable in this particular case is a number. So when you say multiplication is anytime a number Anytime anything is by that, it means multiply. So the only thing you can't multiply 3 and x. The letters and numbers don't work like that. You literally have to multiply 3 by a number, so you have to get x into a number. See, that's another thing. One of the what you're bringing up is a really good point. One of the main problems with math is that there are too many definitions that nobody defines, and then they start changing what definition says on one thing, and then totally with another. So let me give you an example of the stuff you're talking about, because I agree with that. It's complete bullshit. Let me explain this, and let me explain what actually happened with me and a tutor. Now, keeping in mind, this tutor has taught many people, math in school. In high school, he used to teach high school math, and he aced Honors Physics 2. Came out with a 4.0 in Honors Physics 2 in a college. All right, and it's a good college, too. It's not a shit college. He would get grants and scholarships and anything else. All right, so what wound up happening between me and him was, hey, how's it going, viewer? I'm just explaining a quick situation that happened with me for something that happened in the chat that somebody explained in chat, because I agree with what the person's saying in the chat about letters being bullshit. It's not the letter that's the problem. It's the definition that people are using. So you have to identify where the problems are coming from. So, for example, when I have, what happened with me and this math tutor was, in math, if somebody is taught, top is top, bottom is bottom, side is side, side is side, you cannot change that definition without fucking the person up. Because what happens here is, I've been told all my life, in all math, including algebra, because this is an algebra issue, okay? I was told, the way he described it. Now, this is not really his fault, but at the same time, if a teacher is teaching math and somebody's having a problem with it, and the teacher knows the math and the person doesn't, then the teacher is responsible for identifying where exactly the person is having a problem inside that problem. And then they need to backtrack where that person came up with that in the first place in order to be able to correct the problem. Now, it's not really fair to expect the teacher to do that, but at the same time, it's the teacher's job to identify stuff like that, so they can go. So even if the teacher itself doesn't fix it, they should be able to go tell the person, this is what you need to fix. Because the teacher, if they know math the way they claim they do, they should be able to identify where somebody's having a problem, and then either tell them how to fix it or tell them who to go to get it fixed. But to blame a person for not understanding the way a teacher's understanding is fucked. You can't do that to somebody, and that's not fair. So, for example, this turned into a fucking argument between me and the tutor. Okay? All my life, since I've been learning math, no matter who it was, I was told top is top, bottom is bottom, and side is side. Now, when he showed me how to do this problem, there were some numbers and stuff around this, on this paper. And his mistake, now this isn't his fault, but at the same time it is, because it's the generalized terminologies that are used in math. Teachers will say something without realizing what they're saying has fucked with the person, because if it's not the same terminology somebody else uses, you will not be able to follow the teacher. That is a fucking problem, and it's the terminologies in math that there's too fucking many of them that are being used too many different ways, and they're generalizing shit, and nobody can follow what the fuck is being said. And that is a huge problem. So, like, for example, what happened with me is, back to the equation, I keep saying this, but I had an algebra equation. And since I was taught top and top is bottom and side is side, he told me in order to solve this problem, his exact phrase was, remove the troublesome numbers from around the equation. I removed them from the sides. And then I proceeded to try to do the problem and couldn't do it. He goes, I told you to remove the numbers from around the problem. I says, I did remove them from around the problem. He proceeds to scratch out the top and the bottom. I says, that's not around. That's top and bottom. He's like, no, that's what it means. I says, no, then stop teaching people top is top and bottom is bottom. Side is around. Now, I understand what he was getting at, but that's not the point. Instead of saying, yeah, I realize that's fucked up, he actually proceeded to argue with me about what the definition of around was, not accepting the fact that I was taught Top is top and bottom is bottom. That's not around. They're two separate things. But if you're going to generalize top and bottom when you're talking about this, you can't fucking do that. No, this is a total, no, I'm just talking about something that actually happened between me and a tutor to explain, to agree with you that what you're talking about in the chat is true. I agree. It's fucked up and it's bullshit because there's too many fucking loose terms that people are generalizing. If math had one definition for what things meant, so when you said top, and bottom, and then you fucking, if you're told, it's because top is top and bottom is bottom, except where top is not top and bottom is not bottom. You can't learn like that. It's either top and bottom and side to side, or it's around. If you're going to say around also means top and bottom, you cannot be teaching people, oh, you take the number from the top and then you cross it out and bring it to the bottom. You can't fucking do that. That is another problem and a main reason why I agree with you that when you're dealing with things like X, it's bullshit because the terminologies are beyond fucked up. Every teacher's using different terminologies, so if you go to 3 different tutors, you're going to get fucked up. You have no idea what the fuck is going on because nobody can keep the definition straight. But in their head, it is straight. That's a fucking problem. All right, so let me continue here. All right, so this person proceeds to say, it's 9 a.m. and you have an important meeting in 4 hours from now. Is your appointment at 13 a.m. or 1 p.m.? Rewrite the problem for military time. I don't even know why the fuck you would integrate military time into society. I'm quoting stuff later on that Matt C has already said, so I just wanted to clarify. I'm replying to him with a reply Matt C has already said. I've already gone through this, and Matt C has already addressed this, and it's classic, so I'll just go into it. So he's like, rewrite the problem for military time. If you think it's 1 p.m., then you've just done 9 plus 4 equals 1. No, it's not normal addition, but the point is that it follows clear rules and can be useful. That's bullshit. That is totally false. That's him manipulating the way the word in the problem is done to fucking try to get around not having to use basic math and basically trying to tell Matt C he's wrong. Matt C is 100% correct on this. All right, so anyway, but the point is that it follows clear rules and can be useful. We aren't saying that it's 2 plus 3 equals 5. We're saying it's something else. As long as we are clear on that point, what's the problem? Then this person proceeds to say, you just proved that math is, all right, so he's like, if math is an absolute, it cannot change the original set of rules and or not apply or use them just because the circumstances change. Somebody goes, you just proved that math is not absolute. Okay, I don't understand how that statement proves that math is not an absolute when that statement doesn't have anything to do with math being absolute. Math is an absolute because it is. 5 is 5. You're not going to change that. You can fucking pick it apart any way you want. It's still 5. So it is an absolute. I don't understand how. I'll just read this. So you are entirely correct. It's historically contingent, and it's capable of using multiple sets of rules as a situation calls for. That is false. You cannot use multiple sets of rules because the circumstances change. Multiplication works the way it does because that's the way it's set up. You can't all of a sudden change the way it works because it's in a different problem. It's still required to work the way you originally taught it. If it's not, you're going to change it. Then teaching it the way you're doing it is pointless because there's no reason to teach somebody basic multiplication works like this if you're not going to use it throughout every single math problem. That's another point on why people can't do math because humans do math completely incorrect. Nobody can even follow their own set of fucking rules. They're making exceptions for shit. They're telling you, here's how things work. No, it doesn't work here. Then people are asking, why the fuck did you teach me this? Well, you have to know how it works. Not if I'm not going to use it here. If I can't use it here, don't teach me it. You know what I mean? This is a whole fucking problem with the way society does math. And the reason, again, if you're watching this and you're having a problem with math, it's not you that has the problem, and it's not the system. Man has fucked with the system to prevent you from understanding it, which is why you can't do it. So if you can't do math, you're correct. A lot of math cannot be done because the rules themselves state they can't be done, but yet people are manipulating the way the system works in order to get how they want the rules to work, despite the rules saying they don't. The rules prevent certain things that you're taught, prevent any type of math the way people are doing it from being done. People are doing it by manipulating the way it's set up to get the math to fit how they wanted to, instead of actually applying the math to the actual problem. Oh, it's a different set of rules. Math, if fucking 2 plus 3 is 5, what fucking rule can you possibly have to change that? What fucking rule changes that? If you change that rule, then you're saying 2 plus 3 is not 5. Because if this proves it's not 5, but this proves it does, then you're saying 2 plus 3 is nothing. You can't say 2 plus 3 is 5 and then not use it as 5 here because you have some fucked up formula. So let me continue. All right, so he's saying you disprove math is not absolute. So he's like, all right, this person's trying to agree with this person. So now I would like to know in a few words why this fact troubles you. After all, you've just proved it. You could put your name on the discovery. By the way, that happens a lot in math and science. You set out to find luminifera, I can't even pronounce these fucking words this guy's using. This guy's trying to sound smart. And there's some words that I read at a college level. I read it at almost a PhD level, and I can't even fucking read some of these. All right. I think this guy's a science major or something. He's using fucking weird shit. Luminous. That's something from a cave, I believe. Anyway, you set out to find whatever this is, and instead you discover there's no ether, and a revolution in physics happens. You believe, he's talking fucking, he's talking over my, because I don't understand, I don't give a shit about physics. All right, so anyway, he's just talking about something in physics that's like fucking people talking about quarks. So anyway, I'm not sure in physics you're not going to know what a quark is. So anyway, you believe that math is absolute, but math is manifestly not absolute. As you so capably demonstrated, you prove the opposite of what you originally believed. You should be thrilled. You should learn something. This fucking kid doesn't even make any sense. He's taken the term absolute and twisting it out of context. Then again, I can't really say that Matt C. explained it right either. So anyway, for that matter, what do you mean exactly by absolute? Okay, so here he asked. All right, so Matt C. proceeds to say, I have a formula that makes 1 plus 1 equal 3. So I guess that makes it 3, right? Hey, I manipulated the system to make it fit the same way that people are manipulating 5 things to become 6. I really am. And so basically he proceeds to go into this and recapping what he said. He says, okay, if I presented that and it broke it all down in detail, showing exactly how it was done, all anyone here would tell me is it doesn't work like that, but yet you're all saying it does work like that on what you're trying to use it on. So what it comes down to is Matt C. says, if the math system prevents 1 plus 1 from ever equaling 3 because the outcome was manipulated, then the math system will also prevent 5 from ever becoming 6 through manipulation as well. It either works all around or it doesn't. It cannot just work whenever you feel like having it work. And I think that's a really good statement. So in the case of diagram 1, the rectangle, the number 3 is present and so is the number 2. When making a rectangle, the only possible way for the diagram to be set up is like this, and he sets it up. So he sets it up as 3 here and 2 here, or you have 3 on the side and 2 on the top. All right, there are a total of 5 things to count, either 3 across and 2 down, or 3 down and 2 across. Anyone that wants to argue about this being multiplication is not going to remove the rules of multiplication, of how multiplication works, and must be done according to the math system. If there are only 5 things to count, then the answer is 5, which is correct. The math system says so. No, I think there's a formula for it. I gotta see. I'm curious about what that is. I think I read that somewhere. I don't think it's his. I think that I read that somewhere. I'll have to find out. All right. So if there are only 5 things to count, then the answer is 5. Under how multiplication works, the only possible way. Now this is under how multiplication works. This isn't even anybody talking, anybody manipulating. This is how multiplication works. The only possible way for the answer on this in other words, that diagram to be 6 is when there are already 6 actual things present you can count right from the start, and that's a base fact. You cannot make up a digit that does not exist and then include it in the problem multiplication, and then include it in the problem. I think there's supposed to be a comma here. Multiplication doesn't allow that. There must already be, have, or need either 2 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 2 right from the start. If there are only 5 things to count to start, then that's the number you work with. You do not get to make up an imaginary 6th unit by manipulating how those 5 things get counted and then say it's 6. The amount shown is the total. Saying it's 6 doesn't change the amount from 5 to 6. So the answer is 5. And there isn't a single person on the face of this planet that is going to say it's 6 without there being 6 actual things to count from the start. Whoops, I think he wrote he wrote count instead of count. I think that's a mistype. Anyone that says the answer is anything except 5 is wrong and refuses to use real multiplication and addition. And I'm not going to reply to you any further, which is a smart thing, because he's already explained this and beat this into this is beating a dead horse. And he says, I'm tired of people saying that a system has rules, then not following them while saying they are. If something is the color green, then it's green. To say it's blue while it's still green without actually changing the color itself to blue, then it's fucking green. He doesn't say that, he said that. And no amount of manipulation tactics are ever going to change that. And everyone pulls the same stunt with the math. They claim there is a set up rules, which would be green. I think he's making a comparison here. He says there's a set up rules, green, then say the rules are the same, green, while going ahead and doing something that the rules won't allow. People are saying it's blue without changing the color itself through manipulation while saying they are using the rules, which is green. So they're saying it's blue despite it still being green by manipulating something to say it's blue while it's remaining green. That's what they're saying. The entire math system is completely broken and not doable in condition people have created. No one can even apply the basics. They aren't. I don't think no one can apply the basics. I think what he meant to say, or what he should say, is no one is applying the basics. Or he's saying nobody can apply the basics. You're saying all the shit. You're not even applying the basics. That's what I think he's saying. All right. So then here's a secondary reply. All right. So let me see. All right. He proceeds to quote. All right, so he's talking about military. This is the military time comment. All right. When using, so he says, when using 2 and 3 in the first diagram without actually things present to count, yes. All right, so he's basically saying, look at this way. He's saying, Dan is saying, we aren't saying, I think he's replying to this part of the comment. We aren't saying that 2 plus 3 equals 5. We're saying it's something else. Okay. So Matt C replies, when using 2 and 3 in the first diagram without actually 6 things present to count, yes, people are saying 2 plus 3 isn't 5. They're saying it's 6. So that's contradictory. You're saying 2 plus 3 is 5. So what do you mean? What's the? All right, so his answer is like, what do you mean? How is that not up? What do you mean? What's the problem? They're saying 2 plus 3 is not 5. You just said we're not saying it's not 5. Yeah, actually you are. If you're changing that fucking amount of, if you're coming up with a number that the amount doesn't add up to, then yeah, you absolutely are saying 2 plus 3 is not 5. So that's correct. It's fucked up. Okay. And furthermore, Matt C says, and you cannot use military time outside of the military to justify what you're saying. On top of that, military time in itself doesn't work either. Despite it's a 24-hour cycle, the actual times military time uses will not allow it to work the way humans manipulated it to do. There is a difference in basic math principles and rules, and the way man uses their own false logic to force the numbers to fit without actually using the numbers. Case in point, military time never hits 2400. Mark, despite... Oh, it never hits the 2400-hour mark, despite it's written around a 24-hour time frame, 2400. in reality, military time hits 23:59:59, then resets to 0:00. What man did was rounded that number up to 24, and then never actually used the number 24 to attempt to use a 24-hour time frame, and then man rounded that number up to 24, and then never actually used the number 24. To attempt to use, I think there's supposed to be a period there. To attempt to use a 24-hour time frame without the 24 hours is actually absurd, and that's true. You can't, if you're gonna say you're basing this off a 24-hour time frame, the clock in itself would have to be the number 24. Military time does not hit 2400. He's right on that. Military time hits 23:59:59 and then resets to 0. 24 is never present. It never occurs. So, man decided to round it up to 24 and then use a number to base the entire thing off, despite the number not existing. So, in that retrospect, man made something up to fit and force it to work without actually having the number to work with. I think that's a really good point. All right. And it is. It's absurd. You're using... All right. Bottom line is that if there aren't 24 actual hours, it's impossible. I think he's saying it's impossible on the way math works, or numbers to work, to design the framework around it and have it work. That's correct. If you don't actually have 24 hours, if you only have 23:59:59, you don't actually have 24 hours. So it's not possible for you to design a time frame around 24 hours without having the 24 and then having it work. That proves man is forcing numbers to work in a manner the numbers would never allow. This is so far. Matt C has proven math is just man doing whatever the fuck they feel like to it. It actually has no rules. They will say it has rules, and then they won't apply them. They'll just apply them wherever they fucking feel like, and then they tell people, well, you just don't want to learn. The system is fucked up because man screwed it up. If they simply just kept everything the way it was, math would not be out of control. It's a base fact. All right, so this is really in-depth, and it breaks it down, and it's true. So the bottom line is that there aren't 24 actual hours. It's impossible to design the framework around it and have it work. Human thinking against math doesn't work. Never has, never will. And and that is the major problem with this whole aspect of math in general. Everyone is saying math has rules, then creating semantic arguments to justify not using the actual numbers they say the baseline uses. That's actually a really good comment. If certain numbers are going to be used to establish a baseline, then those must be used throughout the entire process, no matter what, or the system itself isn't being used. I think he's meant to say man is just making things up. I've never heard man's as a plural as man is. All right, anyway, man's just making up numbers that aren't part of the equation, and then designing the equation around the number they made up, instead of using the numbers themselves from the baseline rules to do the equation. This is the exact same thing as there is a math problem that uses the numbers 1 through 16 without the number 12. Humans would start applying their own logic and coming up with all sorts of ways to have the problem be worked around whatever they came up with, such as it doesn't need the number 12 to be 1 through 16, because everybody knows the sequential order of numbers from 1 to 16, it's used like that in this and all sorts of other BS, instead of accepting 12 is missing and the problem cannot be done because the numbers the system gives them would make the problem undoable or unsolvable. You cannot ignore that 116 must include 12 while totally ignoring that it's not 116 without 12 being present in the line and lying about how the problem follows different rules. That's perfectly explained. So anyway, he's like, okay, it's clear you have not studied math whatsoever. And that is fine by itself, but to have an arrogance to tell everyone who has actually studied math that they are wrong is just absurd. It doesn't matter what SDK says. Matt C has proven, like, this kid's ignoring the fact that you can't ignore what Matt C's saying. He's totally trying to ignore everything that Matt C's saying. Matt C isn't saying, Matt C is not telling them you're wrong. Matt C's saying, if you're doing the math like this, you're wrong. Because the math says you're not allowed to do it like this. So you're doing it wrong. Now, I guess that is the same thing as saying they're wrong. But the fact of the matter is, SDK is one of these Steam users that fails to accept. If Matt C says you can't get 6 from 5 no matter how you count it because the multiplication doesn't allow it, that's it. There's nothing, you can't argue that point. If that point is going to be argued by anybody, they are ignoring multiplication or how math works. They're literally saying, oh, well, that doesn't work. That doesn't matter. While at the same time saying, well, multiplication works like this in this instant, not like wrong. Multiplication works one way in this instance. It works the same way throughout the entire thing. You can't apply parts of a rule to something, and that's it. So this guy's just a troll. Okay, Skipjack. He says, well, if that's what you were taught. No, that's not. I don't know why you're saying here. This is what people are taught. I've been in tons of math classes. It doesn't outright state this is an absolute. But what happens is when you're going through these math classes, it conforms that it's an absolute. It's not that you're not taught this as, oh, this is what this means. You're taught this throughout the course because it embeds itself in your system. That's what I think he's saying. So he's not saying, I've never been taught this, but what Matt C is saying is right. The system itself eventually embeds into you that the system is absolute. 2 plus 3 is 5. That's a system. Multiplication requires, you're multiplying how many groups of something are together and you're adding how many groups of them together to come up with a number. That is a system. It's absolute. That's what you're taught. So the system is absolute. It can't be changed. There are exceptions while saying it's still an absolute because that's what winds up happening in this case. Multiplication is an absolute. Now you deal with a rectangle that people are not applying, multiplication to. You're saying there's an exception to the system, you said, that has a set way of doing things. If it has a set way of doing things, you can't make an exception to it. That can't happen. The system will prevent the exception from happening. If you're going to force an exception, then you're saying the base system doesn't work. So no matter which way it is, it's a flawed system that doesn't work. Somebody's like, if that's what you were taught. All right, so anyway, he keeps misquoting the term absolute. All right, so when using 2 and 3 in the first diagram, rather than actually things present, yes, people are saying 2 plus 3 isn't 5. They're actually saying it's 6. What people? It seems to me that you're just creating. All right, now he's just being stupid. Well, actually, what's funny here is this is something I love when people do. He butchered his statement and then said what he butchered doesn't make any sense. That's because he didn't quote what the rest of this was being used in. What this is being used in, this just goes to show you that people on this forum have no idea how to do shit. Because he's quoting part of something that goes with something else and then says, oh, what you're posting doesn't make any sense. No, what you quoted this person I keep saying me. What you quoted this person saying isn't all of what they said. So you're taking what you want and applying it to not make sense, and then you're saying what they said doesn't make it. What they said makes perfect sense because they didn't quote the entire sentence. No, Matt C doesn't get confused at all. Matt C there's no confusion on Matt C's end at all. Matt C is 100% on the money. Matt C has not changed anything he's saying. Matt C didn't confuse anything. Matt C saying what people are doing is causing the confusion. Matt C is saying, you guys have said there's a base ruling and a baseline for how multiplication works. Now you're saying that baseline doesn't work while you're saying you're still using it. You're confusing the fuck out of people. You can't make, like I said, what Matt C says is that the multiplication states you can't count one number twice and get a larger number. Multiplication prevents that from happening. Multiplication prevents you from multiplication, I don't say you, but multiplication, oh God, I'm calling you. No, you're misquoting what he said. Let me go here. I'll show you what he says. Okay. He says, here's an example of those two aspects put into practice. All right, let me see. He says, I will explain how the millions of fallacies in the math by using height, width, and depth, obtaining a third variable from a problem that only contains two numbers. That's what he's saying. This is his first post, by the way. All right, so he's saying he's going to prove that the math is flawed by using height, width, and depth, and getting the third variable in that is not possible because there's only two numbers present. That's what he's saying. So Hero said, I will explain how attempting to obtain a third variable in a problem that only contains two numbers is impossible because of the math system itself. And I will explain this using height, width, and depth. He never said he was going to find depth. He's just saying he's going to find height, width. He's going to explain this using height, width, and depth. To begin, let's say you wanted to find the depth of a rectangle area that only has the numbers 3 and 2. And the 3 is on top, and the 2 is on the side. That would make the third variable the depth, because you have the height and the width. You don't have the depth. That's what would make the depth. So that's what he's saying. He's going to show that in this particular case, the depth is not possible to find because the math rules make it impossible to find under the way people are doing it. So the way people are doing it is they're multiplying the two sides together to come up with the depth. And that is wrong. That is no way in hell would the math ever allow that, and which is why he laid the diagram out. He doesn't get confused. He proves that you can't get the depth with the way the math is set up. You can't get the depth the way people are doing it with this setup. It's impossible. Can't do it. You cannot get the depth of this with two numbers. The math won't allow you to. When you have the numbers when you have an odd number, you cannot get the depth of something by multiplying those two sides together. You can't. Oh, no, sorry. You can multiply the two sides together, but you're not going to get the number people are arriving at because the system people are applying to this is not the system math uses. No, he didn't say two-dimensional objects have no depth. He's saying you can't get the depth with just two numbers. That's what he's saying. And I don't mean you're trying to find the area. He's not talking about you can't find the area. He's not saying you can eventually figure it out. He's saying it's not even possible to do. The math makes it. No. It's not even possible to get the depth on this with two numbers. It's impossible. So the difference between saying you can't get the depth with two numbers and you can't get the depth with two numbers is the word can't is two different meanings. The first meaning is you can't get the depth of it without doing the math. So doing the math gets you the depth. The second definition means you can't even get the depth because the math makes it impossible to do. Well, what I'm saying is what I'm saying that he's saying, sorry, this is too confusing with two people. I'm talking through him. What I'm saying is what he's saying. Sorry, that's what I should have clarified. What I'm saying is he's saying. Is that right? Okay. I'm summing up what he's saying. All right, so I'll pretend I'm him or her or whoever the fuck this is. What's going on is the way people use math to get the depth is false. It can't be done because the math won't allow the math that people are the math won't allow the way people are doing it to get the depth. People will say to get the depth, you have to multiply. The math states you have to multiply the width times the height. That's what people are saying to do. The math, on the other hand, says you can't even do that. It's not possible. So for people to even attempt to do that means they aren't following any rules of math. They're just doing whatever the hell that they want. Because that C specifically uses a rectangle with an odd number, that comes out to be an odd number, to prove this point. Because people, if you have... Yeah, but what I'm saying is if you're apply this to a garden, apply this to a hole in the ground. If you want to find out how deep the hole is, people would just go, okay, just multiply the two sides together, and then you'll get the depth. That's false, because you can't just multiply it. You have to lay it out in accordance. Yeah, but that's the same thing. When you have a rectangle, if you want to find the depth, that indicates that it's 3D. You're not. He's literally already states this is 3D. He doesn't outright say it, but he says, let's say, says he's going to use it by height, width, and depth, and automatically puts it as 3 dimensions. There are 3 dimensions to this. He says there's 3 dimensions: height, width, and depth. So he says it right here, and I will explain this using height, width, and depth. No, he just said he's going to explain why this is wrong using height, width, and depth. He's perfectly in line. You're rewording, you're manipulating what he's saying. You're not understanding what he's saying. He's saying this rectangle, I have a 3D rectangle, and I'm going to prove this is wrong by doing this. And so let's say you wanted to find out the depth of a rectangular area that only has the numbers 3 and 2. He doesn't say rectangle. He says rectangular area. Says it right here. To begin, let's say you want to find out the depth of a rectangular area. He never says it's a rectangle. He says it's a rectangular area. No, you're saying it is. He never said this wasn't outside. He never said this wasn't a hole. You can have a rectangular hole, and it's if he says there's 3 dimensions here. I fail to understand what you're getting at. He literally states he's going to explain how getting a third variable in a problem that only contains 2 numbers is impossible because the math itself, and he will explain this, or she will explain this, using height, width, and depth. He says it's 3 dimensions right here. He didn't say only using height and width. You're not adding the third dimension to this. You're removing depth from the equation. He said there is depth. He said this is a rectangular area that has height, width, and depth, and he wants to figure out the depth, but you only have the 3 and the 2. No. How can it only be 2 dimensions when he lists 3? He lists 3 dimensions. You're only listing 2. Height, width, and depth is 3 dimensions. It's very clear what he's talking about. He's saying there's a 3-dimensional rectangular area, and he wants to find the depth on it. It's a word problem. He doesn't say, I want to find the depth of an area that only has height and width on it. He doesn't state that. He says there's a 3-dimensional rectangular area, height, width, and depth, and you want to find out the depth of this. What are you having a problem with? So he's telling you that there's a 3-dimensional rectangular area that he wants to find the depth on, and he only has the height and the width to go by. He's saying that you can't find the depth with just the height and the width. It's not possible. He isn't confused about anything. You're just failing to accept that he already stated this is a 3-dimensional rectangular area. So he says where this is. He's saying the 3 and the 2 are on the height and the width, and you're trying to find the depth of it. It's not that complicated. He says it's a three-dimensional rectangular area. It's clear as day. And he's saying, I don't have the depth, I only have the height and the width, but I want to find out how deep this is. That's what he's saying. If you have a three-dimensional rectangular area, you do have depth, because height, width, and depth is 3 dimensions. He doesn't say, yes, there is. If I dig a hole in the ground, it's a three-dimensional rectangle. If I make a rectangle and I dig it in the ground, it's a three-dimensional rectangle area. It's height, width, and depth. So there is such a thing as a three-dimensional rectangular area. You absolutely can do it. If you want to argue the point that a hole is a hole, that's different. I just assumed he put it outside, so he's digging a hole. He's digging something in a garden. That's what I applied this to. It doesn't even matter. He's already given that. He's already stated that this is 3 dimensions. And that the dimensions he has are width and height. He doesn't have the depth. He wants to know the depth of this. And he's saying it's impossible to find the depth from just the width and the height. And the reason he uses a rectangular area, the reason he uses the shape of a rectangle is simply because two sides are going to be, one side is going to be longer than the other. It puts it into a rectangle. I don't give a shit. Do what you want. Upload them to me. I don't give a fuck. Yeah, whatever. It happens. That's just a community. I don't give a shit. I mean, it's not like end all be all. I'm really curious. I literally am curious about what fucking formula he has, or this person has, that makes 1 + 1 = 3. I'm curious as shit about that. Did you just post that? You just posted that, didn't you? That's hilarious. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I mean, this is just mainly to prove that there's a problem. Like I said, somebody linked me this, and I found this very interesting. I'm gonna actually have to check back to find out if this person actually you know what? I'm literally on the verge of creating an account to ask him what this formula he has for 1 + 1 = 3 is. I really am curious about that. Are you registered on that? Can you ask this person what I'm assuming that was you that just wrote that. Can you do me a favor and ask them what's this formula you have for 1 + 1 = 3? Can you ask them that? I mean, I'll make an account. I don't give a shit. But I'd rather not get in the middle of this discussion. I just think this discussion's awesome. Like I said, I'm assuming that was you. I'm really curious about that 1 + 1 = 3. I don't give a shit about anything else now. Now I want to know what the fuck he's talking about, or she's talking about. This is fucking hilarious. Anyway, there's really nothing further than me to discuss on this. Oh, okay. All right, whatever. Yeah, people use my name all the fucking time, and somebody says, oh, that's you. I'll make a video and say, I'll guarantee somebody's going to take this video, create a screen name with my fucking name on it, and they're going to say, I'm the person in the video. Guarantee it. And sure enough, I have plenty of videos where I've actually exposed that. It's rather amusing, the fucking stupidity level of people. All right, anyway, I'm going to end this stream. Thanks for stopping in, and I just thought this was very, very interesting. So, take care, buddy. I'll be on with another stream. I'm actually gonna I'm on the verge of making a another Diablo 3 stream regarding the Necromancer. Now I don't really have a schedule. I say I'm gonna do things, I just never do. I'm probably gonna make another video regarding the Necromancer on Diablo 3. I'll probably live stream that. I just live stream it because it's fucking easier than, you know, pre-recording it and then converting it and compacting it and doing whatever the hell else and then uploading it to YouTube. You know what I mean? I just don't feel like fucking doing that. So it's easy for me to upload. You know, it's easier for me to stream it and then just friggin' have it go directly to directly up, you know, to YouTube. But like I said, I mean, I'll What do you mean the other site? What other site? What are you talking about? Twitch? Oh, I just don't use Twitch. I never get banned from Twitch. If you're talking about Twitch, I just never use it. I just stopped using it. I don't even remember what the fuck my password is on there. They never banned me. I just don't use it. When I say banned, I'm talking about people fucking that kick you out of chats. That's what I'm talking about. My channel's never been banned on Twitch. Oh, they didn't ban me. That fucking site got shut down, man. Is that where you got me from? When I was fucking streaming Dungeons and Dragons and shit? Yeah, that was on. I forget what the fuck that was on. I totally forget what that was on. But yeah, actually they didn't ban me from it. What they did was they took away my partnership. Oh, okay. What happened was they took away my partnership because I confronted the frickin' owners on somehow they were pissed off that I wound up colorizing my chat. Like I colorized and I organized everything in a manner it's like they got pissed off for me doing it because they didn't do it or they didn't have the options to. Sorry if I fucking looked up how to edit HTML, it's not my fucking fault. But I wanted to have a cool looking channel and they were just like, yeah, this doesn't work. I'm like, dude, shut the fuck up. And so they removed my partnership from it. And I was like, yeah, whatever. Then I just stopped using the site. I didn't even fucking care. It's been shut down now. So anyway, I don't know. I think Disney went after them or something like that because people were fucking posting Disney movies and shit like that. Yeah, I just delete shit like that. And that's one of the main reasons I don't allow comments underneath my videos because I'm not a fucking babysitter. You know what I mean? If you're using a computer, then you have control over your own chat. You don't need a bot or a moderator to tell you what you don't need to see. If you don't want to read or see something, block the person. Period. It's done. You know, it's that simple. You are your own moderator. So if the site didn't have a way to block somebody, that's completely different. And I go over that all the time. People try to literally justify having moderators in their channel. And I say, the fact that you can ignore somebody makes that null and void. The block option is the moderator. If I'm playing a game or I'm doing something, I don't care if people are arguing in chat. It's not going to stop me from doing my stream. I'm streaming and that's it. That's all there is to it. You know what I mean? It's just freaking hilarious. So anyway, all right, I'm going to end this stream. I got to go to the bathroom real fast. Well, not fast, but I got to use the restroom. And I'm going to continue, you know, I'm probably going to, you know what? What time is it now? Exactly. Like, why do you need a moderator to tell you who to listen to? And then you know, I also talk about the links in chat. Now there are exceptions where I will remove something, and that's stuff to kid porn or like threats to kill somebody. You know what I mean? That's a totally different issue where it warrants it. But if two people are bickering, I don't give a flying fuck. If they're debating about Trump, Obama, I don't care. If other people in the chat don't want to see it, block them. It ends the problem. You don't need me to tell you not to listen to it. No, I would just remove. I would not. You know what I mean? Because YouTube. If YouTube didn't, I mean, there's a lot of freaking video sites that is used for like terrorist recruiting and shit like that. So you do have to be careful with some stuff. So there are very few exceptions where you need to, I would have to intervene. But if, disagreeing with a moderator, that's not a fucking reason for a moderator to just, to silence you or throw you out of a fucking chat. That's them being a baby. I can't handle. I start a debate. Oh, you got to respect me. Fuck off. You know what I mean? I don't care. It's like, speaking of that, one time I was playing Neverwinter Nights 2, or I forget what it was one of those games. And what wound up happening was, if this gives you any indication on how I talk to people, I don't give a shit if you're a moderator, a cop, a judge. I just don't care. That my mouth is going to get me in trouble one of these days. But the thing here is that I was on one of these games, and then something happened where the moderator said something snide to me, and I said something back, and I says, listen, I don't give a shit if you're a moderator or not. You don't have any business talking to people like that and then expecting them to respect you. I says, when you apologize to me, I'll do this. So, that went away. I went into the game, and all of a sudden, I get fucking pulled into this room, because the moderator, the people who created it can do that. I got pulled into this room, and they fucking started spamming cows and killing me, and I'm like, are you guys having fun? And so the guy says, well, I heard you had a run-in with one of the moderators. I said, do you know what they did to have me deserve to talk like that? He goes, well, I don't care what they did. I said, then we have nothing to discuss. I'm not going to sit here and have you allow a moderator to be abusive and then you not give a shit about what it says and just allow them to fucking do it. I mean, obviously I'm going to get thrown out of the game, but I'm not going to sit there and fucking tolerate having some jackass defend an asshole. It's not going to happen. If you fucking do something and you get talked to, don't fucking talk to the person that's saying something. Look at the reasoning why somebody. If I said if I said to the moderator, "Hey, fuck you," for no reason, that's on me. But if you say something and then you get what you deserve, and somebody says something back because you fucking deserve it, now that's childish and it's like kindergarten because you don't need to say anything. But that doesn't even matter. If you're not going to allow somebody in person to talk down to you like that, why the fuck are you going to do it over the internet? It's no different. You know what I mean? And so it's funny where people apply that. I mean, yeah, you can walk away, but at the same time, if somebody keeps verbally abusing you or sexually abusing you or whatever, it's not sexually abusing, but saying sexual comments to you, people at work are going to press charges against them. How is that any fucking different than saying something back to somebody on the net? It's no different. But people like to make it is, I can just shut it off. That isn't the fucking point. They have no business talking to you. If they wouldn't do it in real life in your workplace, then what the fuck gives you the right to do it on the internet? Because they can hide. I don't want to say right to do it, but you know what I mean. So, like I said, I get into debates with people all the time about, well, I do a moderator on this side. I'm like, good for you. What reason do you have for being there? Well, I got to control the chat. I said, does the place have an ignore feature or a block? Yeah. Then what the fuck are you? Why are you even there? Why are you needed to tell somebody what they don't need to say? It just doesn't make any sense to me. It never has. So that's one of the main reasons my channel is always the way it is. If people want to argue, go right ahead. It's not affecting me. I'm still playing my game. I don't read the chat, Well, that's like cops. They get off on the power. You know what I mean? That's what it is. Because if you disagree with them, you gotta respect them. They can say anything they want, but as soon as you say something back, timeout, mod, ban, it's like, come on. You're an asshole for doing that, period. All you've done, moderators and administrators cause more problems on forums than there needs to be. My friend and I get into a debate about this all the time. He's like, well, you didn't need to say anything. If you have rules of a forum and the person comes in and says this, then the fucking person is going against rules. You need to remove them. If you're not going to apply and my friend would be like, there's no rules. I said, then what the fuck are you complaining somebody's all over the forum? They shouldn't have to deal with that. Then you're saying there's rules. You can't fucking have it both ways. So I was just like, if somebody comes in and says something to you, like I used to run a forum and I have a very specific set of rules that I used to follow. And, actually, you know what? Let me see if I can actually dig this up. Let me see. What the fuck? What the fuck is that? Oh my fucking god, that's hilarious! What the fuck is that? Google is fucked. What the fuck is that? How long has 4K been out? What year did 4K TVs come out? A Quiet Place. Lori Vargas. Tumblr masturbation. Watch couple of cinema online free. What the fuck does that even mean? What the fuck? Like, this is so fucked up. How long has 4K been out? I'm assuming that's TVs or monitors. A Quiet Place. I'm assuming that's either a library or the movie that they're talking. I'm more apt to say it's the movie, A Quiet Place. Lori Vargas. Lori Vargas is a porn actress. She's a fucking Spanish bitch. Fucking little pig. I know that because I used to create, when I used to redo people's computers, they would always ask me for fucking porn accounts, so I would set them up. So I fucking pretty much know a lot of names in porn for that reason. Oh yes, I watch porn. I don't give a fuck. My wife knows I watch porn. So I don't give a shit. So anyway, the point here is that this is just fucking hilarious because of the way I think, I come up with these weird things. Like, if you ever typed in 2 words in Google to see what to come up with, a long time ago, before Google put out its algorithm about the panda virus or whatever the fuck, the panda algorithm or whatever you want to talk about, you should look that up. That's fucked up. But anyway, the panda algorithm and shit like that, before they did, I typed in 2 words. Like, I just will type in words in Google that never go together. That's just like, what the fuck did you just come up with? I typed in pig suits. P-I-G, suits, as in wearable suit, as in gentlemen's warehouse suits. I typed in pig suits, and when I fucking searched for it in Google, a bunch of links to Viagra came up. It was like, what the fuck? I was like, wow. So this segment doesn't even make any sense. You have 4K TV, or 4Ks, monitors, the movie A Quiet Place, couple cinema online, I don't even know what the fuck that is, A Quiet Place, and Lori Vargas. That combination of fucking words don't even make any fucking sense. Oh my god. Oh my god. I'll never forget the time my friend and I went to my brother's computer and we put this on his computer and we just left it there. He came back and it said it had been going for like 4 fucking hours. It was hilarious. Hold on. Oh, wait. Can I run it? Here we go. We left this fucking spinning for like, 4 fucking hours. No, it wasn't even for cosplay. I just typed in pig suits because it was just 2 words I randomly made up and threw together. Yeah, no, I get it, but it was just freaking hilarious how 2 words that don't go together. I mean, if you put pictures up, you'll have like pigs wearing suits and, you know, clothing and things like that. But just to have in general a bunch of links to Viagra come up was fucking hilarious. I was like, wow, that just threw me for a loop. All right. Anyway, I'm going to end this stream. I keep saying that. I'm going to end this stream and I'm going to go over, I'm going to probably make a Diablo 3 video live stream Diablo 3 video about the Necromancer because there's a lot of shit in there that I want to go over. That there's a lot of, I don't know if you play Diablo 3, but there's a lot of shit in there that I want to go over and touch up on that people are doing that's fucking stupid. So anyway, I'm going to end this. I'll talk to you later. Thanks for stopping by. And I'll probably be doing another stream soon. All right, later.